Hello everyone, thank you for attending. It's been a busy week and we have a pretty full agenda, so I just want to get right to it. First up, we have the usual temporary speaking rules. The Rensselaer Union 45th Student Senate, whereas the Student Senate bylaws do not specify rules for speaking cues, resolves that the following cue procedures be enforced for all discussions during tonight's meeting. The parliamentarian shall maintain the queue and may call a speaker off topic or out of time. A first in, first out queue structure will be used. Those who have not spoken will be granted higher precedence than those who have spoken. Any member of Senate committee chair, officer, or guest present may enter the queue by raising their hand and being acknowledged by the parliamentarian. Back and forth is not allowed. A member of the floor may make a comment or ask the presenter a question and must re-enter the queue if further questions remain. There shall be no time limit spent on any given motion. Each speaker shall have a 5-minute limit on their discussion. If a speaker asks a question to the presenter shall have 5 minutes to respond, regardless of the time taken to ask the question. A speaker with the floor may yield their time to another in the room who may speak for the remainder of the time. One yielded time may not yield the time further, and a presenter may yield their time to another if that person may further answer the question posed. No new question may be posed to another by the presenter without requesting a position on the queue. So moved by Paul and seconded by Jessica.
Request for information. It says there that if you're asking a presenter a question, and if there are any further questions remain, you have to get back on the queue. Does that mean we can't ask multiple questions?
Yeah.
Okay, so we cannot. So we can't take 2 points.
Do you want to amend that in? You said before.
Sure, but I don't know how to word it. Can you just do your thing?
Okay. Yeah, so just ask them as one question and say there's an in-between, that'll be fine.
Alright.
Parliamentary inquiry.
Yes.
Go ahead.
How do we know if motions are pending or not?
If a motion a motion will have reached the floor if you say it, I acknowledge it and I reread it to the floor for consideration. So if you move to amend something and I say, okay, case is moving to amend X, it is then on the floor.
Yeah, exactly. So if we're like talking about an amendment,
Stuff pending.
is it still, it's pending the whole time we're talking?
Mhm.
Okay. So usually stuff is amended.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's basically if something is being discussed. So if nothing is being discussed, so if once this motion is voted on, then we will be in a state where nothing is pending and motions can be made.
But then you'll just start talking right after that. So
Right,
you
because
have to
the
like
motion.
do it really quick.
Okay. James.
I want a motion, I want to amend the motion by instituting a 1-hour limit for all the motions we're considering tonight.
So you want to, you're crossing off there shall be no limit on the time spent on any given motion and instituting each motion shall have a 1 limit on discussion. This can be modified. 1 hour, thank you. I said I wanted a quick meeting, not lightning. So he has amended to raise it to 1 hour. Do we have any objections?
Objection. Is there a second?
Is there a second to the amendment? And there's an objection, so.
I second the amendment,
Yeah, well, Edward already seconded it. Let's stay in order. This is discussed. There's no cue, so I'm just calling on people. Oh, there's no objection? Okay, there's no objection. So unless anyone else has an objection, default time limit per motion shall be 1 hour. You can move to extend debate, etc., but it'll be an hour by default for each motion. No objections? Okay, that's friendly. Okay. Anyone else? Is that something, Jenna? What? Paul?
Can I ask a question now?
Request for information.
Can I ask a question?
Request for information.
Yes.
Was there reset for subsidiary motions?
It's a 1 hour time limit on the time spent on any given motion, so currently yes. But it's a limit per queue, so if you've spent 30 minutes on a motion, and then you move an amendment, there's an hour limit to discuss the amendment, but when you go back, you've still used 30 minutes of your hour for the main motion. If you amend this to say main motion, that'll take care of that.
I call the previous question.
Justin calls the question, this would end discussion. That's this.
Is there a second?
Is there a second to Justin calling the question?
That means we
There's
vote, that means we vote on this.
No, there's no second.
Second, there was a second.
Part of this for a second.
If there was a second, there's no second, then we can just go ahead and vote on it. We don't have to vote on voting on it.
There is no queue.
There's no queue, but no one wants to
Request
speak.
for information, are there printed agendas?
No, the printer broke.
Okay, cool.
You have your computer, it was sent out. I want to move on.
Is there a way to limit the amount of time someone can speak unless they're yielded time by another senator who hasn't used up their allotted amount of speaking time?
There is a 5-minute limit on each speaker.
There's a 5-minute limit on each speaker.
Okay.
No, for each time they speak, they can only speak up to 5 minutes.
No, but I mean like the quantity of time someone can speak.
For the whole meeting.
Yeah, is that done?
You could put that in there if you wanted to.
Object.
Nobody has moved to amend. Any other comments? Otherwise, we're going to move right to vote on this.
So, can you object to life, or what's everybody objecting?
You can't just object to nothing. So, yes, keep that in mind.
started.
Across the hall.
Anybody else?
I call the previous question.
No, don't call the question.
It's out of order. We're about to vote anyways. No one's. Okay.
No, I was voting out.
Okay then. Seeing none, we're going to move to vote on this. It's as read.
Or, wait, is this with his amendment? Or
Yes, with his amendment. It is as read with the amendment that there will be a 1-hour limit on the time spent on any given motion.
I'm not gonna have one.
Does anyone need me to reread this? Okay, all those in favor?
Is it unanimous? No.
I need a head count.
7, 8, 9, 10.
You got 18. All opposed? Passes 18-01.
2, 2, 1802.
Who didn't vote?
1, 2.
Wait, who abstained? Raise your hand just for.
Two.
Okay, 18-02. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, this brings us to our first major topic.
My speech.
We'll do that before we open a queue. This brings us to our first major topic, which is the last Constitution amendment that's been proposed by the committee. The Rensselaer Union 45th Student Senate resolves to approve the attached Union Constitution Amendment on removals, referendum, and petitions to be placed on the ballot during GM Week 2015. So moved by the Union Constitution Committee, presented by Nate James. Nate?
Okay, it's loading. I'll be really quick on this one. There's really only two changes that we're proposing in terms of referendum and petition. 12.
That's the best.
It's going.
Do you want to read it from mine?
Okay.
4, 3,
I just wanted people to see it.
2, 1.
I believe.
We're on this.
Good job.
Someone hit laptop input.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
It's laptop. No, up top.
Okay, so the two changes are as such. One, a voting member of the Student Senate may be removed for good cause by 2/3 vote. Previously, the Constitution read that a member of the Student Senate may be removed for good cause by 2/3 vote. The Constitution Committee believed that the initial meaning of this statement was that any member, excluding the Grand Marshal, could be removed by 2/3 vote of the Student Senate. Basically, there's procedure to remove the Grand Marshal already specified, so we thought that that's what they were originally intending, so this is just to clear up ambiguity on that point. Secondly, a referendum vote on any matter except amendment of the Union Constitution shall be held whenever 1. The Student Senate approves any form of referendum question proposed by a senator, committee, council, or petition by a 2/3 vote. Second, if you receive a petition signed by at least 10% of the union members, and it's not rejected by a 2/3 vote of the total voting membership of the Senate. That's it.
Those are the only changes.
We're going to be opening a queue. Before we do that, as you're all aware, we've had a lot of uncertainties about procedure the past few meetings. This past week, Joshua has worked with Justin, Mike Kaola, myself, and others to clear and Anthony to clear all of this up. This is why you see the sheets in front of you, and he's also going to say a few words about how to keep discussion productive and moving forward. Then we'll open a queue on this motion.
Does everyone have a copy of this chart before I proceed with this? If you need a copy, they are floating this way. All right. So first, the provided chart is supposed to be used as a guide. It's exactly what we're going to be using for these motions. Do not worry about the exact phrasing provided there as long as you are clear, and it is easy for Justin, myself, and whoever's taking notes to know what you're trying to do. That is fine. Second, dissent does not exist. There is no dissent. Period. Exclamation point. Done. No dissent. That doesn't work. Third, these are the following points that you can make. You can make a parliamentary inquiry if you have a question about how procedure works. You can make a point of order if you think the rules are not being followed, aka if the two of us screw up. You can make a request for information if you want to ask Kyle for a fact. Ask for a fact. This must be relevant to what we are currently talking about. Finally, you can make a question of privilege if there is a safety concern or you cannot hear the speaker. For any other topics, you must enter the queue. Unless there is a fire, the union is collapsing, or another life-threatening emergency arises, you must wait to be recognized by the chair before explaining your point. Finally, once a motion has been put before the Senate, aka Kyle has read it out loud, it no longer belongs to the member or committee moving it, but to the Senate itself. If you want to withdraw or modify your motion, it is automatic unless a member of the Senate objects. In that case, we will follow voting procedures as a formal motion. Are there any questions?
Okay. He's going to open a queue on the Constitution Amendment. Keep these points in mind.
Michael.
So, by putting in the language for a voting member, that raises the question, how do we get rid of, if we needed to get rid of, like, the parliamentarian, for example, how do we go about that? Because it sounds like right now it's at the, like they serve at the pleasure of the Grand Marshal. So like, what if everyone on the Senate doesn't like them except for Kyle, which I'm not saying is true right now.
Okay, that's a question to me, I'm assuming. The answer to that, in my personal opinion, is that those positions are not covered in the Constitution, so their removal is not covered in the Constitution, so that's part of your bylaws.
Okay.
Marcus?
Same question, same answer.
Okay. James?
What is the reasoning for not allowing the Union Constitution to be amended by petition?
The reason for that is really that separate amendments have been put forth, separate sections have been put forth as to how the Constitution gets amended. So that's really why. So with other procedures defined, I'll yield to Kyle.
Yeah, that's also how it's been since the original Constitution. That's just a standard that already exists.
It's not something you change.
The queue is empty. Yes, Golden.
I know the Constitution already uses percent, but my question is, how does it easily determine what that 10% translates to as a number of votes?
So you're asking me, it's not necessarily easy, but I mean, I guess it is. You just look at the total population Senate of the student body, which you can. You have I'm sure you guys have figures of the number of union dues paying members, and you divide it by 10. Yeah, the reason we didn't want to put a hard cap in there is that as time has gone on, the population changes,
Yes.
and it means more or less. If you just put a hard cap on, and then we have to change it again in 10 years when the population doubles, and maybe we don't want to just let the same, now 5% of the population make a vote. So that's really why we put it in as a percent.
The queue is empty.
Anybody else?
Dina.
Right. I guess I just want to clarify this a little bit, because I think the way it stands right now is that senators could remove Grand Marshal, right? So this would change it so that senators could no
Yes, that is correct. You guys can still recommend the removal of the Grand Marshal, if that makes sense. But it has to be approved like you put it as a referendum. So if you look at the removal procedure for the Grand Marshal, you guys recommend he gets removed by a 2/3 vote, and then there's a question posed to the student body as a whole as to whether or not they should be removed. I yield to Kyle.
Yeah, the Grand Marshal is more than just the head of the Senate. The Grand Marshal is meant to be president of the student body. I have responsibilities beyond presiding over you guys in this room. And so the thought is that something like the GM or the PU, who are elected, again, kind of as student-wide positions, can only be removed by the people who elected them directly. The 26 senators couldn't stage a minor coup and directly remove them. Staging a coup. Yeah.
Jenna.
So this, I'm sorry, I'm not articulate today. So we're talking about 20% of the student body last week, you're now changing it to 10%. Or is this a different thing?
Okay, what it previously said was 20% of any constituency.
Okay.
And as one of my committee members said, I'm the constituency of Anthony Barbieri, and 100% of us believe that this should be a referendum. So any constituency is kind of vague, but the smallest number that could be, like what you would really think of as maybe Greeks or a single class, so it would be like 250 or something. Or it could be of the entire union, which by definition is 20%. If you have 20% of the whole student body, then by definition you must have at least 20% of a constituency. So it's really not that. So we're looking at 10% of the entirety of the union would vote for something to change. So any constituency was very vague in our mind, and we felt it was better to lower the threshold and make it of the entire student body.
Anthony.
Yeah, going back to Tina's point, I just wanted to, like, within the Constitution right now, there's a section which specifically says here's how to remove the GM and the PU, and then there's here's how to remove members of the Senate. So the fact that there was a separate article right above it for how to remove the GM, where the committee had the feeling that it looked like it was intended for senators, basically. So rather than keeping that vagueness in there, we just wanted to add that word to clarify it. But there hasn't, and somebody also asked if that's like officially the interpretation, since it hasn't technically been interpreted. There's no official ruling on what it actually means. So, just like that.
Mike.
I just want to make it clear that as of now, we could, by 2/3 vote, with the GM out, and that kind of models what the real government works at kind of deal. The Senate and the Congress can vote the president out, essentially. So it's a good point that we have that power at the moment, right? We keep the GM in check a little bit as well. I understand the whole point of the student body, because they voted for him, being elected out as well. But at the same time, we were all directly elected from the student body as well, and we speak for our classes. So I don't see the point, I don't see really why we couldn't determine what our classes want and what GM as well.
You yield back to me.
Do I yield to you?
You don't have to.
I guess
If he doesn't want to, he doesn't have to.
All right, buddy. Okay.
Mason.
I yield to me.
Oh, okay. Basically a few things. One, the President of the United States is technically elected by the Electoral College, so they get to remove him. So the people who elect him get to remove him as well, or kind of ish. What was the other thing I was going to say? Secondly, I forget. What did you say?
All right. Kyle.
Yeah, just because I presented one side, the other side to it, kind of reinforcing Mike's point, would be that the Senate could decide whether, if I had done something wrong, if I've done something so egregious the Senate wanted to remove me on the spot, or the Senate just wanted to call a recall election and leave it up to students. So it's really a question, should there be that flexibility, or is this a case where we should rely on the direct election as the means to both put someone in the top hat and to take them out?
Lexi.
I agree with the amendment how it stands right now, just because I think it is a good comparison, you know, how the Senate and the government, U.S. government, can take it out. But you do have to consider that there's much less members than a U.S. Senate in this Senate. So I feel that it might be a little easier gaining a 2/3 vote for maybe an unworthy cause of taking out the Grand Marshal.
The other Anthony.
I mean, the real reason why, like, we made this amendment isn't really, like, or why we do this Constitution isn't really to change how, like, say, you know, how our government's run. It's more so just kind of make the Constitution match how we run our government. So, and also when you look at the way that the Constitution was really originally written, it wouldn't make sense for the intent of the Constitution for that, or the intent of that line to mean the Grand Marshal when there's a completely separate removal clause for the Grand Marshal himself. So I think this is just to clear up any ambiguity so that this couldn't be called. But I mean, if you want to go back to like the raw intent of the Constitution, it's pretty clear that that clause was not intended to be used against the Grand Marshal.
Nate?
I was just going to say I remembered that I don't know for sure what this currently says. There's been no official judicial board ruling or any sort of interpretation. I don't know. So basically, if you guys tried to do that for the Grand Marshal, I would expect someone to appeal it to the judicial board, and then some sort of decision would be made. As honestly, in what he was saying, we're trying to clear up any ambiguity here. We think the judicial board members in the room thought this may be what it meant. We just thought this was more likely what it meant, and trying to clear it up for the future.
J-Board Anthony.
So also of note too, even if that was intended for, that you can remove the GM, it's a simple 2/3 vote, it's not even 2/3 vote of membership, which is a pretty low barrier to remove the head of the
Mike?
So it does read right now that any member of the student senate can be removed for good cause by 2/3 vote, and that the GM is a member of the Senate. So as of now, it does stand by constitutional rights that you could remove them. 2/3 vote by itself is pretty low. I do agree with that. I don't really agree with the Senate losing this power in addition to that, so maybe a different 2/3 total membership, maybe, something like that, right? But this is a good power the Senate has, I think, still, and it should be discussed before we lose it. And I want to know, actually, what is the procedure to move the P right now? Can the E-Board move that, or is it just the Senate?
I believe it's just the Senate. Was it not?
It's the Senate.
I can't actually remember.
I'll yield to Anthony maybe for you.
I believe it's the same as the GM, which is a 2/3 vote of the Senate followed by a recall election. As far as I know, I don't have the document in front of me, but that's what I remember.
All right, I put myself in the queue here. The Grand Marshal or President of the Union may be removed under the same exact procedures. Am I reading the whole procedures here?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
The same.
Unless there's objection, I'm going to read. The Grand Marshal or President of the Union may be removed from office by a petition requiring his or her resignation, signed by at least 50% of his or her constituents, or by a 2/3 vote of his or her constituents voting in a valid removal election. A valid removal election is one in which at least 20% of his or her constituents vote. A removal election may be called by a 2/3 vote of the Student Senate or by a petition signed by at least 20% of his or her constituents, followed by a majority vote of the Student Senate. Jess. Anthony Barbieri.
Just want to go back to Mike's point, just because you don't know if you actually have that power since that particular phrase in the Constitution has not been interpreted. So it's not necessarily that the Senate has that power right now. Even though it's not.
The queue is empty. Keegan.
Point of clarification. I'm very lost at the point. Hopefully someone clears up for me. So what?
There's no such thing. But you can still ask me.
I'm just saying that in my question.
Okay, continue, you have the floor.
That was a form of saying that was not actually a
You're fine, continue.
legal speak. I'm very unclear right now based on what he just said and what Mike is saying. Does the Senate actually have the power to, by 2/3 vote, remove the GM, or to start a petition for the removal of the GM colleague vote? I'll put that to Anthony Bishop.
Well, that's what we're exactly trying to remove here. So if you look at the two clauses that could be construed to remove the GM, there's the one that we're trying to amend, and then there's the one that, and then there's the other one, which would require a vote of the student population too. So in our opinion, the other clause, the one that we're not trying to amend here, is strictly harder than that clause. Which seems to me that if they had a specific clause to be strictly harder to remove the GM than any other standard member, then it probably was not the intent for that clause to be interpreted as removal of the GM. This Constitution has been amended many times. It's conceivable that something got changed, and that clause wasn't updated such that it wasn't updated such that the GM couldn't be removed.
Justin.
But in actuality, though, intent's not what matters. It's the fact that matters that what the law says and the law says.
Are you yielding to anyone or no?
No, it's just a point.
Anthony Barbieri.
I'll yield to Anthony Bishop.
I mean, if you go by the actual law, judges do actually consider intent when trying to decide like what if somebody's broken a law. I mean, obviously they go by the words first, but if the word's ambiguous, they will often defer to intent. Like, I mean, like a perfect example is like, say, the 14th Amendment, right? Like the Constitution has been used to rule so many things out of order, way beyond the scope of when it was written.
Mike?
Alright, so as of now, it does stand that the GM is a member of the Senate, and that we can remove a member of the Senate as well. The J Board can interpret the Constitution, yes, when it's appealed. As it's written right now, we can enact that if we wanted to. J Board can't step in and say, no, you can't do that until it's appealed to them. So as it stands right now, we could do it, and we're losing this power from that. If it's appealed later on, they decide it was never the intention of it, or however they decide, then we couldn't do it, and it changes, right? But as of now, it stands we can do it.
Kyle?
Two things. First, I am going to back up Mike. I think that this, just like my current ability to vote on bylaw changes and on the activity fee, this is a case where because I'm defined as a member of the Senate, I could be removed by the Senate by a 2/3 vote under this clause. So again, it is a question of whether we want to keep that in there or whether we want to change it. I don't think it's ambiguous right now enough for intent to matter. Second, I am curious, given the way this is worded, to see if a parallel exists for the executive board or the judicial board. That is to say, I'm curious, can any member of the executive board currently be removed by 2/3 vote, or is that listed as members of the president of the union's cabinet following the current writing? I'll yield that to Andrew.
Members of the executive board can be removed by 2/3 vote of the Senate or majority vote if brought forward by the president of the union. That's how that works.
Paul?
I believe that this should just be taken out, partly because since the Senate has the power, this currently gives the Senate the power to remove the GM and also to make a referendum suggesting the removal of the GM and then force that to be voted on 2 weeks later. So it's not really like we're losing that much. We're just losing an obscene amount of power we have to be able to just play God in a situation with anything, just being able to remove the GM willy-nilly in 20 seconds. So, I'm done.
Shosh?
So currently, there is no parallel for the executive because of the way it's worded. So in the removals, it says that any of the members of the executive board cabinet, and then it specifies how they can be removed. In the upper section describing the executive board cabinet, the president of the union is not included. The executive board is the president of the union and his or her cabinet. So the PU is not in the cabinet, so the removal clause does not appeal to the PU. So there's no parallel with the PU. This is just a hokey works with the GM.
Edward?
I think it's important that we know that we are trying to vote on this amendment to send to the students and let them decide if it's appropriate. So why don't we just vote it on and see how students think about it?
Jess?
I was just gonna say, even though it, like without voting member in there, it does technically mean that we can vote by 2/3, but it also contradicts the section that was read that is like specific for the Grand Marshal. So I don't know, I'm not gonna state an opinion on it, but it contradicts what's right above it without putting voting member in there. Because it says we can do because it's 2/3 vote of the student senate is a removal election, but then right underneath it, which is this section, says 2/3 vote of the senate can remove, essentially. So it contradicts this section that's directed for the Grand Marshal.
Michael?
Okay, so I was gonna say that I was gonna say pretty much what Edward said. So, but another thing I wanted to add is if you're gonna vote no, I would say don't do that because either we should keep it like this or we should amend it to say a member of the student senate may be removed for good cause by a 2/3 vote of its entire like total voting membership. Because right now, if like everyone abstained, it could be like a 3 out of 4 people will say yes, and then we remove the GM. So if if I am following the rules.
That is correct.
So that is a bad thing, and I think the way it is right now is fine, but I'm curious as to if we can amend it to say it's total voting membership, regardless, even for voting member.
Is that a motion to amend? Or?
I'm throwing the idea out there if anyone would like to amend, if anyone agrees with me.
Tina?
I'm going to amend this.
Motion to amend, what are you amending?
Motion to amend, sorry, I'm writing out what I'm gonna say, so I don't say it 5 different ways. So, I motion to amend, to remove the word voting and add 2/3 vote of its membership.
Wait, of its total voting membership? Because of its membership is the current problem we have. Okay, so Tina's amendment, and it has been seconded, is to remove the word voting and make it 2/3 vote of its total voting membership. Does anyone object?
Object.
Okay, it's unfriendly. Total voting membership, yes.
All right, we are going to open a queue for discussion of Tina's proposed amendment to remove the word voting and add total voting membership.
So again, this would change it back to a member of the Student Senate may be removed for good cause by a 2/3 vote of its total voting membership.
Lexi?
I objected because I think logically that voting should stay in there, because I do agree with Jess. It is a little bit contradictory if we were to interpret this phrase as the student can wipe out, the grand marshal with a 2/3 vote of his total membership, while we have the other clause in the Constitution that says that we would have to put up a referendum. So I want to include voting in there. That's my stance.
Shoshana?
Two things. One point of information.
Request for information?
Request for information.
That's okay.
Which section is this in?
This is in Article 9, removals.
Section 1.
Okay.
Section 2.
Oh, Section 2.
Section 2A.
Hold the phone.
Right. Do you have a second point there?
Yes.
Okay.
1 second. Wait, B? Is that what you're saying? Section?
A.
2A.
So if you look at the board of the track changes, the amendment would remove voting, which is currently being added, and it would add to the end of the Student Senate's total voting membership.
Okay, can I say my second point now?
Yeah.
Okay, Michael, I understand the concern you raised where you're like, well, if everyone abstains, then it's based on the few people left who aren't abstaining. But by the same argument, if you do by voting membership, then you could have where people don't come to the meeting, they walk out, you only have a couple people voting, and then again, it's a still small group of people making the decision. That's why I like the idea of the student body electing, and if they have a problem, removing the Grand Marshal or PD.
Mike?
Alright, so I want to cut out this real fast. The way it's standing right now is not a contradiction. It's just there's 2 choices we can do. 2/3 of us decide to remove the GM, that's something we can do. Or 2/3 decide that there's a possible reason to remove them, and that the student body decide. It's not a contradiction. Just means we can go about with the same amount of votes. So I think it still plays fine the way it stands now, and decide what the Senate wants to do. They decide we want to be gone now, or if they decide the student body should decide what they want to do. So those aren't against each other, but they kind of go together still.
Mason?
I really like the point that Michael brought up, and I think that regardless of if we decide to go through with removing voting, we should have the voting membership and not total voting membership, but total membership clause be added for both regular senators, and then if we remove the voting, it would affect the GM as well. But I think that even removing a senator should be something that is more seriously taken than, I guess, people not attending.
Jacob?
Yeah, I think it should be pretty difficult to remove the Grand Marshal, just because it's very difficult for the Grand Marshal to be elected. I think this is far too easy for the Grand Marshal to get removed, and that could lead to some bad problems. Essentially, the Grand Marshal now has to lead with a gun to their head by the Senate, so if they do anything controversial, there's always that threat that, oh, well, If you do something too bad, we'll just nix you. Not that I see this senator, senates in the future, but that's something we definitely have to take into account when writing a constitution for the future. So I'd be very wary of making it this easy to get rid of the Grand Marshal.
Tina.
Again, I agree with Mike said, we're not making it easy, we're maintaining it because we currently do have that power to do it. And I guess the way I know that the Grand Marshal, yes, serves the student body, but he also has an obligation to lead us. So we, as much as any other club as part of this union, he's like our president. And that being said, like if he's not effectively leading this room should be able to say, hey, we need someone else to lead us. When other organizations, their presidents all, they can put a new president in place. They don't have to go to the student body because they're a service club. They don't have to go to like the people they serve. They can do it through I also was kind of playing around with another idea. So I'm not gonna like motion to amend this amendment, just putting it out there. It would make some people happy if we have two different statements. So you could leave this statement the way it is, and then add like a sentence after it that says to remove the Grand Marshal would be 2/3 of the voting membership. So it's a different standard between removing just a senator and removing the Grand Marshal. So to remove a senator would just be 2/3 of the voting, where the Grand Marshal would be 2/3 of the voting in the Senate. So because I know that there were some issues that were brought up about if you're trying to remove a senator who doesn't show up a lot, or like if there's a group of them, then it's going to be really hard to get 2/3 of the membership, or when you're trying to get someone in there who's actually going to show up. Just a thought.
Michael.
So I wanted to go back to what Shoshana said. I think I disagree because you said something about like a small group of people still control the vote. If it says total voting membership, we still need right now like 18 people to come to the meeting so we can actually vote, and then it has to be a unanimous vote for it to be like a accepted vote for it to pass. So I don't think that's considering like it's a 2/3 of its total voting membership. So if we have 2/3 come and they all vote yes, that's still a significant margin. I think having this for senators and Grand Marshal is a good idea. Instead of senators can be voted off by like 3 people and 2 people saying yes. So I think it should stay the way it is. And yeah, it still needs a unanimous 2/3. So it's not like it will be easy.
Anthony Bishop.
So I did just a quick little research on this, and the first time that the GM was referenced as a non-voting member of the Senate was when the amendments went through in, what was that, 2013? Yeah,
yes.
In 2013. So, and there was no changes, and that removal clause, the one that's specific to the GM, was instituted in, was present at least in the 1987 revision. So it's clear that the only reason why that clause became, relevant to potentially removing the GM was due to the fact that the GM was defined as a non-voting member of the Student Senate, which was to clear up another ambiguity. But in my opinion, they were mistaken because now that's led to a new ambiguity. So it's really clear from the intent that the intent of the people who are trying to modify this document that they weren't going for that clause to pertain to the Grand Marshal. That was clearly a mistake, especially when you consider the rationale behind why they amended it to say non-voting, the Grand Marshal be a non-voting member of the Senate in the first place. It was not to make that apply.
Anthony Barbieri.
So a couple things. I think if you do keep the voting word there and keep it as it was originally written, I think it might be good to raise that bar just to remove a senator. If that many people want to remove it, I think that's a totally good idea. But the fact, if you interpret this as that you can remove the GM from the Senate, then the GM is just removed from the Senate. They are still Grand Marshal. So then if you want to actually get rid of the Grand Marshal, you have to follow the procedure to get rid of the Grand Marshal. So it's just an extra step in a removal process to remove the GM. So you're just bogging yourself down if you want to take that route. So therefore, I think as myself and the other Anthony have argued, it was never intended for the GM, and this is, I think, just for senators. But as I said, I think it would be good to move that to be a 2/3 vote of the voting membership rather than just a 2/3 vote.
A request for information. If the Grand Marshal was removed from the chair of the Senate, but he's still Grand Marshal. How does the Senate chair it?
I'm not sure.
Vice Chair will take it.
I don't agree with the interpretation that was just proposed, but it's not my job to interpret, so I can't really answer that.
Right, Paul?
Oh, yeah, just kind of to address some points that were raised earlier. Yes, other clubs are able to get rid of their presidents or remove their offices if they're nominated, but at the same time, those clubs' memberships and those clubs' leadership aren't chosen by the students as a whole, they're chosen by the members of that club. Being the Grand Marshal and presiding over the Senate is supposed to be a big deal, and it's a decision by the entire student body. And an 18-person vote, which is not even 1%, it's a quarter of 1% of the student body, shouldn't just be able to have a unanimous 2/3 vote to remove the president of the student body of the entire institute. That's a large amount of power in a very small amount of people, so just think about those facts.
Jess?
That was my first point. I guess the second one was just, I guess, clarifying in a way. As it stands, by saying like 2/3 vote, that just means like those who say yes or no, abstaining is abstaining, right? So that doesn't count. So then if you amend it to be the 2/3 of all voting, that means that abstains still count technically as no's, which is why that I think that clarification is necessary. Right? Somebody to answer.
Answer that.
Am I right about that?
What's the request?
I'm just asking, so if it says 2/3 vote, that means abstains or abstains, so it's 2/3 of those saying yes or no?
Yes, 2/3 vote is
so if we
2/3
say
president
2/3
voting, 2/3
vote
total
of all
abstains or
voting.
effectively no.
Okay, thank you.
James?
So, after some of the comments, I think we would probably be best served by voting down this current amendment, and once we're back to the main motion, entertaining an additional amendment where we outline a procedure to remove the GM as chairperson as the Senate, but not necessarily as the GM of the student body, but simply maybe some sort of 2/3 full Senate majority vote where we strip the GM of his chairperson of the Senate powers, but leave in all the other powers that the GM has, and those would be taken care of by the full absolute removal of the GM by student vote. So that's just kind of my thoughts on.
Are you moving the previous question?
No, I'm just kind of stating what I think of.
Kyle?
So I'll speak up a little louder about this one. I don't agree with Anthony's interpretation because in the Constitution, the Grand Marshal is explicitly stated to be the president of the Student Senate. I don't think the Senate can just remove that role from somebody without removing them from the GM role completely. So I don't know if this would be possible, and I think we'd open up another series of ambiguities that might lead to further J-board cases and more confusion.
Jenna?
I think an issue with just sending this out to the student body is that people don't really know what's going on in Senate. You see how active the general student body is in Senate and coming to GBMs and everything. So how could they know if the GM's doing a good job unless we say something about that? I think if we have like a two-step process where the senators are like, hey, look, we don't like the job that the GM is doing, and 2/3 say, I think we should put something on the ballot to remove the GM, and then the students vote on that, I think that that's the best kind of action.
Edward?
Call the question.
Second. That's valid. Question has been called. All those in favor of closing debate? You can say it either way. All those in favor of closing debate on this amendment? Not on the whole motion, on this specific amendment. Raise them high. All opposed? Okay, passes 17-1-1. So we're going to move to vote on Tina's amendment. All those in favor of the changes of Tina's amendment. This would remove the word voting that is currently being added by the Constitution Amendment and add to the end of that sentence by a two-thirds vote among the total voting membership of the Student Senate. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, fails 212-5. We're back to the main motion.
Lexi.
Not here.
James.
Request for information, time remaining on the current motion.
42 minutes approximately.
We gotta do that amendment pretty quick.
Mike.
Okay, so, points in history of the Constitution aside, this is currently in the 2015 Constitution, which is the only thing that matters right now. Intent aside as well, because it's not our point to interpret it, just to follow it. People have mentioned before that essentially we shouldn't be responsible for determining GM, stuff like that, because we're only 18 people, voting-wise, right? But once again, I want to tell everyone that we represent the student body. They elected us, and we speak for them. So if it's 18 votes or more votes, that's fine as long as we speak for our class, not personally, right? I still want to change this so it goes back to at least the normal way it was before. If that vote's too small, let's make it bigger, right? Total membership kind of makes sense to me still. If you want to make it higher for the GM in particular, that's what the concern is. 4/5. I don't care how it works, but I think we shouldn't lose this power yet because it's in our. Right now, if we wanted to, I can turn around and motion this, right? And Jay Board can stand there and can't do anything about it until tomorrow when Kyle appeals it. Continue. We don't have this power right now, so it's strange to lose it on this technicality because Jay Board said we might rule at one point the other way. They haven't yet, and they can't right now. So I would like to see this go back to the normal way or make it harder, or even make it harder for the GM in particular, if that's a concern, and go from there.
Colton.
So regardless of whether or not you interpret it to allow the removal of the GM or just a senator, the way it's written right now with a 2/3 vote, that means that you could have like a 2-to-1 vote with a bunch of people abstaining. Can someone tell me if I'm right? I yield to, yeah, that's Kyle. Yeah.
Sure.
Sorry.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so like, it's silly.
Mason.
I would like to motion to amend it so that way it maintains the voting. I don't want to touch that. But instead of a 2/3 vote, a 2/3 vote of total voting membership. So that way it applies for both senators and in this case it would apply just for senators because I think that the 2/3 problem that's been exposed would be an issue just for senators, not even considering the GM.
Okay, so your motion to amend is just adding of the student senate's total voting membership to the end of that sentence?
Second.
Do we have any objection? Okay, seeing none, it's friendly. Wait.
I object.
You object to just adding 2/3 total voting membership? Okay, Tina objects.
Okay, we are going to open a queue for discussion of, sorry, who just moved that?
Mason.
Mason's proposed amendment. And who am I seeing first? Edward.
Call the question.
Second.
Objection?
He's the only one on the queue out of order.
Mike.
Cool. So the only issue with 2/3, so fine, 2/3 is small. 2/3 of total membership makes sense for bigger claims, but what if you were missing a lot of meetings? Right now, if you miss enough meetings, the Senate can vote you out, right? Possibility here where you miss enough meetings, but that messes up the whole 2/3. So say this table doesn't come, right? Over and over again. We don't have quorum, or we just have quorum by a little bit, right? And then 2/3 of voting might not even be possible, essentially, right? If that entire side does not want to come to the meetings, right? So not coming to meetings should be, if you don't come to a meeting, maybe it should be able to get rid of you, right? By 2/3 vote of whoever's there still. I think that might be okay still. I'm afraid that the possibility that enough absentees might ruin at least quorum or make that 2/3 vote very small. Well, make it not possible for this membership, right? That's my only concern with this.
Request for information. If a senator is absent for 3 meetings, are they able to be removed without a vote?
No, they still need to vote.
Okay.
Kyle.
Yeah, I want to echo what Mike said. If we're in a situation where there are enough senators missing that it's very hard to have 18 people unanimously vote to remove them, then the Senate could almost be paralyzed. So that's something worth considering if you want to add this.
Justin.
What if we instead did, right now we've only considered the possibilities of president voting or total voting membership. What if we did total voting membership that's present? Because then abstentions.
That would be total present membership.
Total present member, thank you.
Friendly.
But,
Don't friendly. Keep going.
Continue.
But, then also we need to make sure that it's total voting present memberships, because otherwise we don't include you or a committee chair.
It would be present voting membership.
Present voting membership. That way, it's the same rules as total voting membership, but the people who are absent wouldn't count because then then the Senate can't be paralyzed. Just something to think about. I'm not amending anything. Continue.
Anthony Barbieri.
So, if you feel like 2/3 is too high, you could also just do majority of total voting membership, which would reduce it to 13. So that's a lower. If you ever get below 13 on the Senate, something's really, really wrong. But I just feel like it's good. It shouldn't be easy to just remove somebody who was elected by their entire class.
Tina.
One of the things is, even though you say like easy to remove someone elected by their entire class, I know not to pick on grads, but a lot of times grads get in here just by like a write-in of a few names. So like we may have 6 grad senators who don't want to be in Senate, don't respond to our emails, have never showed up to anything, but got written by their class, and we have no way to get rid of them because now they're 6 votes, and then a couple absent. Like we can never get that 2/3. To get new grad senators in who maybe want to be in there because we can't remove them and we can't get them to resign. So just like think about that as like the way elections work. There is a probability that like if we get a bad election bunch, I don't know, like we can't do anything about it and now we're stuck without a Senate for an entire year, which doesn't really make sense.
Shots fired. Anthony Bishop.
I withdraw myself.
Andrew.
I also withdraw.
Nate?
I just wanted to say quickly, the senators filling seats normally appointed by council may be removed by 2/3 vote of the council. So that means that just because the Senate can't remove someone doesn't mean they can't be removed anyway. Thank you.
Case?
I move to amend what Justin said.
How? What do you want to add?
He wants to do what Justin said.
Oh, make it present instead of total.
Oh, I yield to him, I guess.
I motion to amend the amendment to say, present voting membership.
Present voting.
Present and voting.
No, not
present voting membership. That would mean of the people in the room, you need 2/3. Abstains are effectively
That
none.
wording's ambiguous because
It's
present
standard
voting
Robert's
means I
rules.
vote now.
We can't be having back and forth here.
It's standard in Robert's rules. It's actually established what present voting means.
Could I have it, I'd like to have it say total
He
voting,
made
total
it.
voting membership that is
Yeah,
present.
I made the first one.
That, okay, you can amend that. Total voting membership that is present. We have a second.
The standard.
Fine, present.
Present voting
Whatever.
membership.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, present voting membership is the amendment, changing it from total to present. Lexi seconds, do we have an objection? Okay, we have an objection.
We're gonna open a queue for discussion of Justin's proposed amendment to, I believe this is Mason's proposed amendment to the motion to amend the Constitution. Tina.
I would like a J-board take on what this new wording would mean, and how it fits in with other ones, so I'm going to yield to Anna.
Which one? Okay, as I understand it, I don't speak for the whole J-board, it would be 2/3 of voting members present. So say you had 18 voting members present, that would require 12 of those 18 to say. So that's how I interpret that.
My question is like, is that standard?
We haven't used it throughout the Constitution. This would be the first time that phrase.
Try to avoid the back and forth.
Tommy.
I don't think this is a good idea because you can kind of railroad someone where like they have a personal feud with a lot like say you're doing something that's controversial in the Senate, and it's not a means to get rid of them, but they have a differing view, you could conceivably have like that person and all of your support miss the meeting, and then have that person get voted out of Senate if, like, you know, you only need the present voting members for a specific meeting. So I think that creates a lot of like unforeseen dangers by doing that.
Marcus. Okay.
Request
Andrew.
for information. What, without any of this right now, how does it work?
Okay, that's recognized. Without any of this inserted, you mean?
Without the amendment at all? of the
Without any
motion.
changes to the
Like
Constitution?
right now in the Constitution.
Right now
how
in the
do you remove a
Constitution, to
senator?
remove a senator, we could call a vote to remove someone if out of 18 people here, 12 abstain, so there's 6 that vote, 4 vote yes, 2 vote no, they're removed. It's present and voting. This point has been made clear, as have other interpretative things, so I ask please pay attention to what others are saying so we stop repeating the same points.
Andrew.
Just something to consider. I know I personally believe 12 people should not be able to consider and rule on that faith.
Mason.
I just wanted Anthony's take on, first of all, the motion, because I'm considering withdrawing it at this point, and also, so yeah, I yield to Anthony. Like, how do you, or not yet, but how do you feel this effect? Do you think that it is a definite possibility, and like the case, is it bad or whatever, from Jay Borden's perspective?
I mean, I expressed my opinion earlier. I think if you think 2/3 vote of total membership is too high, I think a majority of total membership would be better. So I think as I mentioned to Tina, it's 2/3 of those voting present. So I don't like the phrasing. I think it's weird to introduce another percentage of 2/3 membership into the Constitution. It just makes it more complicated than it needs to be. Sorry for the answer your question.
Michael.
This is interruptible. I hereby withdraw my motion.
You're seeking permission to withdraw. Does anyone object to Justin withdrawing his motion?
Object.
This is now a non-debatable majority vote requiring a second. It's on.
Apparently he looked this up.
It's on the floor.
Okay, it's your call. You said this is a 2/3 vote or a
No,
one?
this is a majority vote requiring a second.
So is anyone going to second Justin's withdrawal of motion?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of withdrawing Justin's motion?
Please raise your hands and keep them high.
I got 16. All opposed? Okay, that's gonna be 16-03. That passes. Amendment withdrawn. Continue.
I'm trying to figure out where we are. Hold on one second.
Mason's
There we go.
amendment.
We're right here. We're in sub
We're in Mason's amendment, sub 2.
Michael.
Hey, I'm on Okay, so right now, as it stands, we are at a 2/3 vote of its total membership.
Total voting membership.
Total vote, okay. So I wanted to say earlier that, I believe it was Mike that made the point earlier that I disagreed with. But I think, so my freshman year, like, we didn't have any grad senators. I don't remember if those spots were filled. And then you guys came in and it's great, like we have actual graduate representation. But I don't think the Senate would be crippled if we only, if quorum is 18 people and we need 18 yes votes to say like this guy has to get out. I think it wouldn't be hard if it's a like solid, if everyone thinks they should be removed, then they should be removed. And if 18 people say they should be removed, then like, I don't know if that makes sense, but I guess what I'm saying is the idea of removing someone shouldn't be something that is heavily debated. It's either a yes or a no. It's either they're clearly not fulfilling their requirements, or they're almost fulfilling, or they're almost on the verge, so they shouldn't be removed yet. They should be given a second chance. So it is difficult to remove them with the 2/3 of total voting membership, but I think it's a good requirement, and it's not going to cripple the Senate if we need to reduce that total voting membership by voting them out.
Tommy and Paul. Marcus. Sorry.
Is it
point that I've heard a couple of times. It hasn't come up in a few minutes, but I just want to point out there have been mentions of votes where 12 people abstain, where the vote is effectively an abstention means a no. I just want to point out that even if the abstentions don't mean no, that is 12 people abstaining, so I personally don't like to think that's very likely, and if 12 people choose to abstain on a vote, knowing that that influences the results that much, then, I mean, I don't think that's an effective system, and I don't think that we should have anything like that possible in a situation like this. That's all.
Tommy?
I disagree in the fact that removing someone is a big deal because they were elected, and we're only looking at like the extreme measures when someone doesn't show up. But what if, like, if we make it only people that are available at the meetings, you can have people get voted out for maybe not this Senate would do it, but there's huge rifts in the Senate. We could have continuous motions to like reject the senator, dismiss a senator, and that could just create a huge amount of wasted time. One, because you're going to be continuously voting on trying to vote each other out if the Senate doesn't get along.
Jess. Mike.
I'm just saying, the Grand Council was here in full, 3 people, and we always are. You're gonna have to see us, but we're here in heart. When the wind blows, the Grand Council.
Mike, can you get on topic of the amendment, please?
It's on topic. That's Bachelor Senior class.
The queue is empty.
Any other comments on the amendment?
Tommy.
That's senior class.
Okay. All right, seeing none, we're going to move to vote. This is on Mason's proposed amendment, which would change the requirement from 2/3, which defaults to 2/3 of president voting, to 2/3 of total voting membership. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, passes 10-6-3. So that language has been changed to 2/3 of the Senate's total voting membership.
Anthony Barbieri.
We're back on the
main queue.
I like how this sounds. I like how this reads. Yeah, so I like how that reads currently, and I would like to see this pass.
Michael.
I forgot. I think the original purpose why I was here was to pass this, so I too like the way it reads. I think we should call the question now.
Is that a call?
To call the question.
Okay. Second.
Call the question.
All right, the question has been called. All those in favor of ending discussion and voting on this amendment?
Request for information.
Yes, go ahead.
Queue.
We are on the main queue.
Who's on the queue?
Sorry, it is Marcus, Mike, Edward, and Steve.
All those in favor, keep your hands up. All opposed? That passes. Okay, 12-5, that passes. 12-5-2, thank you. We're going to vote now on the entire constitutional amendment. If this it's a 2/3 of president voting. If it passes, it will be put on the ballot during GM week. Keep in mind, this is the last meeting we can vote on Constitution. All those in favor of moving this amendment to the ballot? All opposed? Okay, passes 14-3-2.
Okay, request for information.
Yes, go ahead.
How much time was left on the queue when we ended?
How much time?
How much time?
I think he already set his watches.
I believe it was approximately 25 minutes.
I was just curious.
Let's stay in order, guys. So, next on the agenda, we have a motion to reconsider. This was moved by Justin, and it's moving to reconsider on one of the previous Constitution amendments. It reads as follows. The Rensselaer Union 45th Student Senate moves to reconsider Motion 6 from March 5th, 2015, detailing the Union Constitution Amendment on judicial procedures. So moved by Justin and seconded by Paul. Justin?
I get to speak?
Yes.
Okay, so essentially, when we passed this amendment, I had forgotten the little part where it's basically null and void by having it there, and we're kind of looking ridiculous by having a null and void policy in the Constitution. And it was wrong of me to vote no, and I see that now, so let's try this again. I've been approached by the current J-Board chair who asked that if we could try it again and see if we can see how it works. Otherwise, I think that there's an alternate measure, but it's not the best measure. The best measure would just be to remove it because the handbook specifies it in a more up-to-date way, and either way, this policy isn't used at all. So, we should remove it. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna open up a queue for discussion of Justin's motion to reconsider motion 6 from March 5th, 2015. Yes, Mason.
Actually, I pass.
Request for information.
Yes.
What exactly does that amendment entail? Because I was not present during that meeting.
The amendment in question removes the current description of judicial procedures from the Union Constitution. That's it.
I have a request for information as well.
Okay.
I know that we have a break built in at 9:20. Do we immediately stop, or do we have to
We immediately stop.
The queue is empty. Yes, Anthony Barbieri.
So I did talk to Justin about this. I just wanted to have a little bit more discussion about it. As he mentioned, it's kind of weird having a part of a legitimate document that we run by have a section which basically does nothing. I think it kind of calls into question the legitimacy of the document if we're just going to keep in this part of the document which has no effect on the students. It's confusing if I have a student judicial advisor trying to help a student through the disciplinary process. The student might read the Constitution and be like, oh, is this how it works? And then they have to be like, nope, that's not actually how it works, even though it's in this legitimate document. Please look over here at the handbook, which actually dictates the process. So I think it's very confusing to keep these in there. If you guys would like to keep this and let the students vote just to see if they keep it in there, that's awesome. If not, I worked with Nate and Justin on at least updating the processes, but if you update the processes now, it's going to kind of just become a trend of doing that every time that the processes change in the handbook. They'll have to be updated in the Constitution, which has to be passed by students. So it's just going to keep being a revolving process if you have to do that.
Shoshana.
This queue is about the motion to reconsider, not the actual amendment to the Constitution itself. The only thing that's changed is Justin feels like he made the wrong vote. I don't think that's enough justification to reconsider a motion.
The queue is empty. Paul.
I feel we should probably reconsider this just due to the information we have about having been able to look into the validity. I'm getting cold about pizza, so validity, problems. It's stated in the handbook. I'm getting your food. Bye. Hello?
Paul. Sorry, Edward.
I would like to listen to someone who voted no last time to tell me why they voted no, so we can reconsider if we want to do this again.
Michael.
I think I disagree with this sentiment that there wasn't anything new. As far as I knew, the content in the Constitution was, I didn't know that it was already incorrect. Maybe it was stated that it was very incorrect, but to me that was new information. I think it does warrant a reconsider. I voted yes, so I can't really say why, but yeah.
Nate. Steve.
I'd just like to respond to Shoshana's point. I feel that if one senator believes that they voted incorrectly, that should be enough to reconsider a motion if they'd had second thoughts. And additionally, Justin's belief that he voted incorrectly does kind of lead into other people, or it basically means that other people may believe they made the wrong choice as well. So I think we should consider.
The queue is, sorry, go ahead. Yes, Spencer. The queue is empty.
Any other comments on the motion to reconsider? Otherwise, we're going to move to vote. What does this require?
It's not alphabetical.
It requires majority. Okay. Seeing no further comments, we're going to move to vote on the motion to reconsider. The Rensselaer Union 45th Student Senate moves to reconsider Motion 6 from March 5th, 2015, detailing the Union Constitution Amendment on judicial procedures, as moved by Justin, seconded by Paul. All those in favor of reconsidering? All opposed? Okay, passes 13-4-2. So I'm going to open discussion on that motion, on that motion, which, and by the way, 13-4-2, can you write that? I'm going to open discussion on that motion, which reads as the Rensselaer Union 45th Student Senate approve the attached Union Constitution Amendment on the judicial procedures to be placed on the ballot during GM Week 2015, as moved by the Constitution Committee and presented by Nate James.
I'm going to open a queue for discussion of the Union Constitutions Committee motion. The queue is empty. Case.
I'd also like to hear someone who voted no give reasons why, because right now it's unclear to me why you would not vote yes for this.
Justin.
I had originally voted no, and this is not necessarily a valid argument at this point, but I didn't really understand the whole purpose, the whole point. I had thought that the handbook mirrored what the Constitution said, so I thought, well, you know, it just shows that, you know, if it worked for so long, why does it need to change? I didn't realize that the administration had already enacted different policies that differ. So essentially, and the other thought that I had initially was that, you know, if we remove this from the Union Constitution, we're potentially, if in the event the Union removes it from if the administration removes it from the handbook, and we don't have it in the Constitution, it eliminates our ability to do so. However, this point is invalid because the administration could do so either way. So, it doesn't warrant, now that I now see that it doesn't warrant to have correct judicial procedure in a document for that purpose. Like, it doesn't have any purpose at all, with or without the handbook being present. So.
Colton.
I agree with Justin, but just for information, I'd like to know what parts of the handbook currently contradict the policy as it stands, and I'll yield to Nate.
Person better, I can yield again, but I'll just say quickly, the big part is judicial advisors is changed a lot. I'm gonna yield to Anthony because
You can't
I
further
can't.
yield.
Okay.
Well, actually, you are the presenter, actually. I apologize. You can further yield.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna yield to Anthony.
So yeah, looking through this,
Are you calling for the orders of the day?
Do it. You're up.
Okay, let's interrupt. We have a 10-minute recess. Go get your food. All right, we have quorum. We're gonna get back to order.
Oh,
well.
You asked.
Continue, please.
Yeah, Colton had asked me what was out of date. So basically, currently the student judicial advisor setup, as specified in our constitution, there's a chief student judicial advisor. That position no longer exists, so we don't follow that procedure anyways because it's not in the handbook. Also, the faculty board is now the faculty academic board, so it's a completely different named board and it has a different description. The joint board also has a different description. We still have the Greek judicial board in there, so we are also technically have scope over IFC. The words interfraternity council and Panhellenic council are also still in this amendment if it stays in the Constitution.
I would like to suggest that in lieu of removing the entire section on judicial procedures, and obviously I can't make this motion, I would entertain if someone would like to, that it instead be written that something along the lines of see the student handbook of rights, however that's properly phrased. I know there's been some concern going around of, well, what if students look here and don't know where to look? This could just specify what document to go look at, which would then be updated by the administration as they see fit. Marcus.
I wanted to hear the rest of what Paul actually had to say because that seemed like important information that I would be better off having. So I'll give my time to Paul.
Well, thanks. So I was just saying it's kind of like, it's something, essentially everything that's in this document under judicial process is useless because the Constitution doesn't have jurisdiction over that. We don't have the power to decide it. It's completely out of our control. And every time the administration changes it, we would have to ask the student body to vote on it, which means a minimum of changing it every 2 years. And we're also looking at that the student handbook is dang it, I got something on my glasses. A document that is, the administration is able to change at any time without notifying us. So we just, there's no point in it being there, and it just would force us essentially to hassle students more about having to vote on this every other year.
Tina. You are in the queue. Would you like to say anything? Okay. Andrew.
So something to consider. So like, pose a scenario. If you were to get in trouble and you were to look at the Union Constitution, you were to read how it states what you should do and the process is, you were to get ready for the process, and then you realize it was completely wrong. This is a real scenario that could happen if this stays in because of the fact that the handbook overrules us and it's ever changing. And this is like a real concern that needs to be addressed.
Michael.
Going off that point, I would say, I would hope the first thing that people check isn't the Constitution, it is the student handbook. But in the event, yes. I wanted to go back to what you were saying about saying, hey, look at the handbook. We were talking about this in cabinet last night, and one of the concerns about going that route was it would give off the impression that we are ceding control. We aren't ceding control, but it would give off the impression that we're saying, okay, we give up having these student rights and we're giving them to the student, we're giving it to the handbook, which we aren't doing. But we don't want to risk all of the progress that we made on all the constitutions and having someone just say, hey, they're taking away our rights, let's vote no on every single thing, which is exactly what happened last year. It was more of a misunderstanding than an actual taking away students' rights last year as well. So let's not risk that is what I want to say. And if someone gets in trouble, they shouldn't, I don't know why you would check the Union Constitution over the student. That's all I want to say.
Edward.
I would like to say it's the Constitution. It's not a student guideline, so it should keep as simple as necessary as possible. And this point that the judicial process is pointless in the Constitution, so we should remove it. I don't think there's a problem with that. And I would like to call the question.
Second.
Okay, question has been called. All those in favor of ending debate and voting on this Constitution amendment?
Request for information, who is on the queue?
Aiden, Shoshana, Anthony Barbieri, Paul, James, Jess, Kyle, Colton, and Justin. And not Justin.
All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, passes 13-5-1. So this means we're once again going to vote on this amendment. The Rensselaer Union 45th Student Senate approves the attached Union Constitution Amendment on the judicial procedures to be placed on the ballot during GM Week 2015. So moved by the Constitution Committee, presented by Nate James. Once again, this requires a 2/3 vote. Final decision up to the student body if it passes. All those in favor? All opposed? Passes 14-1-4. All right. So this is going to wrap up our work on the Union Constitution, I believe. So a round of applause for Nate James. moving on then, so we can keep moving at a good pace. We have the petitions and referendum handbook that was postponed on Monday, so we can deal with it today. Paul is going to present.
So put that. So
The petition and referendum handbook.
take this, plug it in while I rinse my hands.
Paul, where are you going?
Wash my hands off so I can-
Okay, go.
Yeah, you know what?
It's over.
Motion. You voting first? Can I call you voting first if we're waiting for Paul? I'd rather-
Sure.
Okay, since we're waiting on Paul, so that we can keep moving, I'm going to call the electronic voting adoption, which is also on today's agenda. So this reads as follows. The Rensselaer Union 45th Student Senate resolves to adopt the Rensselaer Union voting system as official voting procedure starting GM Week 2015. So moved by R&E, presented by Paul. We're doing e-voting. We weren't sure when you were coming back.
All right, I'm going to open up a queue for discussion on
Well,
the...
I think he's presenting really quick.
What am I doing?
E-voting.
Do the normal, do the normal.
Hold on. We've been starting in the floor.
You
Point of order, point of order, point of order.
Call.
Point of order, the other motion was already also read.
It hadn't been ready.
He just announced the name.
I only said what the
But
name of the handbook is.
the orders for the day have been called,
Well, it's on the agenda, so it's fine.
but we're out of order, so...
Okay, he calls, Mike calls for orders of the day, so then we'll do petitions first. Can that be it? Is there anything I can do about that, or no?
You could rule it out of order.
No, that's fine, that's fine. We'll just go. I just want to go.
Doesn't matter.
I agree, Mike.
You want to read the motion?
I'm waiting for him to present.
Okay. The floor is yours, Paul.
Okay, so I'm still Paul. This is still the presentation on petitions and R&E mix. We're back, we're here, and we're adjusted for inflation from our last presentation. Also, the tables are great. Hi, Mike. I know Mike.
Stay in order, let's go.
Okay, so once again, may have messed up, but the Union Constitution overrules anything we have in this, but we have Arizona, so everything's okay. Once again, thanking WebTech. Hi Mike. RIT Student Government and the rest of R&E because, well, they have to deal with me making presentations and making them react to things like that.
What is that?
Continue.
Okay, so updates. We updated a few things from, the last time we presented to be in line with the motion that was passed amending the Senate bylaws to add the facts that, and R&E discussed and voted on these, and the fact that signatures still count even if somebody has graduated. The date is now 1 calendar year instead of a month or whatever it was beforehand. The rollover date is added, so if a petition reaches the threshold near the very end of the Senate's term and they aren't able to address it, it's addressed by the Senate. Also, instead of it's changed so that we'll be voting, the wording is changed so that it addresses the fact that we can either vote to agree or to disagree with the motion, with the thing. And also just grammar, because I'm bad at English, and clarifications of other questions that have been asked by people. So, yeah, still trying to address the place of petitions in the space-time continuum. So the handbook actually has 2 parts, which are
Let's stay in order, guys. Keep going, Paul.
which are the rules pertaining to petitions and referendums themselves. These are, so there's kind of 2 different parts. We're talking about petitions. So let's say that you decided, like some of my friends decided, that you wanted to put a table in the elevator of Barton, and then they made you take it out. So you wanted to start a petition to put a table in the elevator of Barton so you can play poker in the elevator. So there's kind of 4 main sections under petitions, which are the rights and eligibility of who. So that just explains the process of who and how a petition can be made, either in paper or on the website, who will be moderating the website, and yeah. So the petition process on paper is still the same as it's always been. get a paper, get signatories, turn it in. It's kind of long, it's boring, it makes trees dead and sad. Boo. If only we had a cool website thing that you could do that on. So, we've been working with WebTech over the course of the past year to make a petition website where people can post petitions and a small explanation of it. People will be able to sign it. Your signature will only show up as your initials. So if I decided to sign something, it would say that it was signed by the number 3.1415, etc. So, and the petition website will be moderated by WebTech, since they're the people who, well, maintain and built the website, and the Rules and Elections Committee, since we have jurisdiction over elections and stuff like that. And yes, sponsors will be notified if petitions are pulled or removed, or we'd like them to change it in some kind of way. And, well, this now is petitions part 2. This is cool. So then what happens, there are a bunch of different paths that the petition can take in terms of when it reaches the 250 threshold, or before that, the Senate can choose to address it at any point in time. Once it reaches that threshold, the Senate has to address it within one of the next couple GVMs and can vote to take whatever action they think is appropriate, whether it needs to be referred to a different body, or we choose to adopt it or choose to not adopt it. And if it reaches the 10 or 20% number, which was just discussed earlier today, depending on whether it's an amendment to the Union Constitution or if it's about something else, then the Senate will vote on whether or not to have full student body vote on it. Which then, then it turns from a petition to a referendum if it reaches one of those criteria. There should be something about the 10% vote here, but I screw up sometimes. So in part 2 is the actual referendums, which has to do with campaigning for your referendum, how referendums are voted on, and decisions like that, postering, honor code, extended sign policy, which is a new extended sign policy, which RNA is allowed to make, since the Student Handbook of Rights and Responsibilities allows for the Student Senate to override sign policy. Under discussion. So referendums, they'll be voted on by entire student body-wide elections. Typically, it happens GM week, but special elections can be called within certain restraints. And the text of the referendums and the reasons for them have to be publicized and advertised to the public. Postering. So this is important. You're allowed to poster. You're allowed to say whether you want to go for or against an amendment. If you want, you can submit a platform to the Rules and Elections Committee to be posted on the elections website. So if people are seeing a bunch of posters and want to find out what your stuff's about, they can find all the cases for or against petition or referendums that people want to post on the internet somewhere. There are general rules about posters and petitions, like you can't say that about people in general. No attacks, other things, just be nice and talk about actual issues. Honor code that applies to campaigning applies for this. And the referendum and petition extended sign policy will be enacted year-round, because we can do that. So that means that this will be in effect and we'll be able to protect petition and referendum posters even when there aren't other campaigns going on, which currently is not the case. Oh yeah, Broomball training program. So we're gonna have that. Joe's in charge of fitness. I'm in charge of tactics. We're gonna be the e-board because the e-board sucks. What? Did I say that out loud? So yeah, the end.
All right.
Questions?
So to read the motion, the Rensselaer Union 45th Student Senate resolves to approve the attached petition and referendum handbook, so moved by the Rules and Elections Committee, presented by Paul E. Laurie.
Okay, I'm going to open a queue for discussion of the Rules and Elections Handbook. Shoshana.
I have 2 amendments. The first is that on page 3, you actually insert the URL. The second,
We aren't gonna do that because the website hasn't been adopted yet.
That'll be inserted pending adoption. That's the plan.
okay, I will let that slide. Second amendment,
She'll let it slide.
section 3, moderation, point 1, if anyone cares to look at it. All petitions through the petition website are subject to moderation and potential removal by the Rules and Elections Committee and the Web Technologies Group. And then separately, paper petitions are subject to the Rules and Elections Committee.
What are you moving to amend?
Yeah.
Section 3 moderation, point 1.
Please stand at ease for a sec. Paul, could you pull it up?
Yeah, you pull it up on the presentation. You can stand at ease for a moment while we bring this up.
That does not mean stand up. Sit at ease.
You can stand.
Oh, you can't stand.
No.
What?
Isn't it valid to just say at ease without the
It's always an option.
Not sure.
Stay at
Stay at
ease.
ease.
That's not how.
in the military at ease.
Email the most recent adjuster setting because yeah.
No, pull it up.
Quick update, the URL that I sent out is apparently messing up in some way, so Paul's sending out a refresh one so you can all pull it up on your laptops. We'll get to that, that's next. Michael, that's next. The website itself is being discussed.
I'm curious now.
That's exactly how it works.
I'm adding it, yes, but I'm adding this for something for my idea. If we're at recess, you could have.
Spelling errors.
Spelled the URL wrong.
Senate should be receiving an email.
No laptops.
No, I said you can look at this in your laptop. You're
That was a
fine.
joke, relax.
Hey, let's be nice.
In the meantime, Paul's gonna pull it up on the screen, so please direct your attention up there. Shoshana, can you indicate the section and subsection again?
Section 3 moderation.
Wait, do you want me to pull up the Word doc instead of
It's there.
This is
Yeah,
fine.
it's
Roll
fine.
with it.
Just roll with it.
Yeah,
too
but if people wanna-
late.
She is changing, she's amending it.
Yeah, so you put it as a comment, not.
Section 3? Which part?
Shana, can you please repeat your proposed amendment? Anthony's got it.
Okay, so basically, where it says all petitions, you would say all petitions posted to the RPI petitions website, and then at the end say that paper petitions are subject to moderation and potential removal by the Rules and Elections Committee.
You say electronic. Electronic.
Do you want posted to the petition website, or is the electronic okay?
Motion to the petition website.
Okay, so Shoshana's amendment is to say all petitions posted to the RPI petitions website are subject to RNE and WebTech, and then add a sentence after that saying paper petitions are subject to moderation by RNE.
No, at the end you would say that.
Oh, at the end of the paragraph, she would add that. Do we have a second?
So it's separate moderation. My reasoning is that web technologies should only be involved with the website specifically, because if you look at our normal thing, no website, then we don't need web technologies involved with that. It just adds more complexity if the two committees disagree.
Does anyone object to her change? Okay, hearing none, that's friendly, that'll go in there. Let's move on.
Mike,
What was the?
Yeah, there was a
can
second.
somebody just turn on
And if
text
it's
changes?
friendly, you would
so
actually
it-
ask if it's friendly before you even need a second, I believe.
Second.
Jacob! What's a second?
We can't friendly it anyways because we don't have quorum?
What?
No, it doesn't work that way,
Yeah,
it's
I know.
if the floor objects.
Whatever.
Do we? I don't think the floor. No, you're right, we're one person away.
Dang it, Smell.
No, it's friendly, you're fine.
I know.
Jacob,
I'm not.
you were.
Oh, yeah. I was gonna ask about the specifics of Joey V's fitness plan.
That is off topic for the petition.
New business.
It was in the
referendum.
website, it was in the presentation.
It has nothing to do with what we're trying to approve here, which is the petition, the referendum.
Continue.
Michael.
Can you go back to the PowerPoint? I had a question about the slides.
No, click folder. Click Senate. Click top thingy. No, the other top thingy.
Can you go, it's like the one right before, the one about Joey B.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so I guess how are you going to, when a referendum is like started and like we start the campaigning period for a referendum, how are you going to be like monitoring? Like, are you going to be setting up cameras? Are you going to like watch at 6 in the morning to make sure no one tears down posters? Like, how are you going to like monitor the petition of posters?
It's one of those things that works the same way Arnie monitoring normal posters are, which it's like, to be honest, we can't sit around and watch things all day because thermals and fluids, that's why. So it's just, we'll do the best we can and operate the same way we do with normal poster violations, where if we see somebody tearing things down or somebody comes to us with proof or evidence, then we'll address it, but otherwise, it's like, we'll just deal with it like we deal with everything else because we aren't full-time security people.
Marcus.
I'm currently looking through this, and if I haven't found it, if it's mentioned in here, is there an appeals section for if you have a petition reversal? Okay.
Mike.
Alright, so I'm gonna echo Michael Holland here. What is the procedure for the public to report bad posters or bad postering or else to you guys?
We should probably put it in there, but emailing rne@union.rpi.edu, or if you see me in the street, shout at me, don't hit me.
Mike, you're requesting that that sentence be added to this?
You guys can do it.
Yeah, the committee can do that, it's not a notification.
Lexi.
I just have a question in regards to moderation. You say that it's possible that you can refer a petition to another organization instead of bringing it to the Senate. Do you have like any specific reasons why you would do that, I guess?
Stuff that's out of our scope, like if it's talking about removing staff from the institute, we can't do that, so just be like, hey, we can't do this. If we know who's in charge of that, we can. If it's about relating to a club's budget, we'd say talk to the e-board about it. If it's relating to stuff on campus being broken, we'd send it on to fix. It's just stuff that it's not out of our scope to be able to handle it and we can't address, but we know somebody else on campus can, then we'll give it to them. Or tell those people who to give it to.
Edward?
So I thought back in freshman election, there are posters writing morning mail on it and has no name and no email. Does anyone remember that? So my question is, are we allowed to pull down those invalid posters?
Nobody is allowed to rip campaign posters down other than the 10 members of the Rules and Elections Committee. Those posters, since they aren't actually campaign posters, since they aren't for an actual candidate, they're just under normal institute sign policy. So it's just like anybody putting up any poster. It's not our gig. I mean, we technically can rip it down if we want to, but we really won't because there's no purpose.
Kyle.
To answer Lexi's question with regards to referring to another organization, pretty much, and you're going to hear more about this when we get to the more technical part in our next motion, but the way the site works, a petition can reach kind of two thresholds. One is currently titled in progress. He's going to be editing the text quickly to say recognized, which means the Senate has chosen a course of action. And one of the possible courses of action is simply to put We have referred this to the judicial board. I will, or not the judicial board, the executive board. I will continue to serve as your point, or senator, or whoever will serve as your point person on the project. Contact them if you have any questions. Contact the executive board if you want to make moves more directly. The petition can still gather signatures and still continue. We don't want to prohibit that. Other examples would be petitions that can be resolved through an immediate request to fix. So if you have a petition that says, like, my door has a broken hinge in my dorm room or something similar, we would send that to Fix, and Fix would ideally be able to fix it. So that's kind of what referral is. It's if there's another group that can deal with it quickly, we don't want people to have to go through the relative bureaucracy of working with student government to reach that. The benefit of going through us, of course, is for larger scale changes or for things that don't fall explicitly under these other groups. They can kind of pursue it as their own project. The Senate can support them, and there can be more of a driving force behind it.
Mason.
I guess this is kind of off topic, but just going back to the posters, and this is a question for Paul. Does RNE's sign policy, or does RNE supersede the sign policy? Or would the sign policy, because how come RNE is elevated above the sign policy?
So what happens is there's institute sign policy, which is stated in the student handbook, and at some point it says that the student senate is allowed to essentially override it for stuff that has to do with elections or something that can pass it. The way the student senate chooses to do that, since RNE runs elections, is through RNE's extended sign policy, where we state what we're going to do in the elections GM Week handbook and the freshman elections handbook and now this handbook. So that's how RNE overrides.
Just to clarify, despite the fact you're on the queue, because it was off topic on the motion at hand, please make a request for information. Victoria.
I was not raising my hand.
I'm sorry, I thought you were raising your hand. The queue is empty.
Any other comments on the referendum and petition rules? Anyone else have any amendments? The handbook, yes. Anything else? Seeing none, then we'll move to vote. This is a simple majority following the new bylaw amendment last Monday. The Rensselaer Union 45th Student Senate resolves to approve the attached petition and referendum handbook. So moved by Rules and Elections and presented by Paul E. Laurie. All those in favor? All opposed? Passes 18-0-0.
Wait, we're at quorum?
Yeah, we're.
We're at 18. We're at quorum, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, 18 is quorum, so.
6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, we have 19.
We have 9? No, we
I
don't.
count 19.
He's not in.
Oh, I counted 8. Yeah, I counted 8. Yeah, so we have. 8, what are you doing? Okay, so to continue. And Anthony, could you pull up the petition website on the projector for the demo site? Yeah, the current
they're on
silly
there.
beta petitions are on there.
You can, it expired.
Well, not only do they expire,
First
they
of
don't mean
all,
anything
you
yet.
can't sign stuff with my account. That's.
Okay.
What are you doing?
So,
No, stop, like, oh my.
hold on a second, Paul. The Rensselaer Union 45th Student Senate. Whereas the Student Senate supports a broader spectrum of student expression, a proactive student body, and a strengthened student voice. Whereas the Student Senate supports the expansion of student initiative, community involvement, and a productive student-administrative relationship. Whereas there currently exists no convenient means for Rensselaer students to petition the Student Senate, resolves to endorse RPI petitions as a valid means of petitioning, following rules determined by the Rules and Elections Committee, effective March 8th, 2015. March 18th, 2015. I'm still bad with numbers. So moved by the Rules and Elections Committee and presented by Paul E. Laurie. So a few quick notes on this. This has been reviewed in cabinet last night, and there's some points of feedback that are going to be given to Gabe. If you have any thoughts on this that you want to bring up, bring them up. I'll let you know if it's something that's already being dealt with. We're at a stage where we're comfortable putting this motion before the Senate because it's at a stable enough release and anything remaining is fairly trivial, hence the 1 week period till its release. Go for it.
So, as you can see, there's a website, which I'd like some of you to volunteer to run the mouse and stuff for. Thanks, Mike. So, this is the petitions website. As you can see, there is
Side conversations.
stuff. When you decide to go up the top, there are several different options where you can choose to view the petitions in progress, view responses to them, and click create your own. So, Mike, how about we create a petition?
What do we want to use the petition?
More pastry?
It's already a petition.
And what happens is when you make a petition, you can just select to have its name and and have like your description you want to have on it. And if people are looking to try to find similar petitions or petitions that relate to concerns they have, you can choose the different tags on it. So there's student government, student rights, academics, assorted various petition topics of your persuasion. And what?
There's no queue.
No, I don't think, and I don't believe you can currently make your own petition thing. And then what happens is it shows you what it'll display as. You can hit submit. And yeah, it just shows whoever signed it, their initials at the bottom. So if we want to go look at, and you can share it through, you know, Facebook, Twitter, the Reddit machine, Google Plus, because there's that one person who uses it, and LinkedIn, because you want people who are hiring you to know that you give a crap about stuff. Do not share that on my LinkedIn. And if you scroll down, you can see, like, let's look at something that has petitions so you can see what it looks like when you have multiple signatories. And as you can see, it shows the RCS ID of the person who made the petition. So, yeah, Rindoa is not a word in the dictionary. And you can just see that there are various different options for signatory, or it shows the different signatories of it by their initials. Yeah, we're trying to figure out why Michael Hahn's initial is just H. He's currently...
Actually, to clarify that, as it stands right now, the way it's calculating the initials, it's literally taking like the first and fifth letters of the RCS, and since Michael is such a short last name, there's no fifth letter, so he's just H. So Gabe's gonna be fixing that really quick. It's minor, the site still functions, but...
What? Oh, go to the homepage. What did you do?
Oh, someone made a petition.
Oh gosh. Oh no.
Let's sign it.
Go back. Yeah, let's sign a petition. Sign a petition.
Why is that academic?
Paul, you want to explain the screen?
So, more signatures needed, you know. You signed something, so it's letting you know, yo, you got signatures, hooray, but you need more. So it's giving you ways to share it with all of your internet friends. So some of them can, you know, click. So that's pretty much the website. Are there questions? Concerns?
Gonna open a queue for discussion of the proposal to approve the petition site. Shoshana, effective March 18th. Shoshana.
I see that it has an about, but there's no like contact us. So if I want to add a tag that's not there, if there's a technical issue, it goes down. If I think something should be moderated that's not, I have no means to get in contact with someone and express my concerns with the physical site. So I want a contact of some kind somewhere.
Okay. We can add that in, I guess. Okay. Sure, we'll talk about adding that, and I don't think it'll be too difficult. Thanks.
Kyle.
So I met with Gabe earlier today. A lot of the text things you notice, like it still says in progress responses and petition thresholds are for a student government response. Those are being fixed very quickly. They're just textual changes that are going to be done in the next couple days. This is why the adoption is pending March 18th. All of the core functionality is there. At this point, we're going to be doing things like just rewriting the about page, and I already gave him the text to put in there, and it includes the contact us and the proper moderation text based on R&E's new petition and referendum handbook. So all of that's going to be in there within the next 2 or 3 days.
Case.
Just out of curiosity, why does it have the initials of people rather than their full names?
Because some people felt that they don't want to be fully identified by their full name as who signed the petition, and we felt like that was kind of a middle ground between, it kind of shows that people signed the petition and it's verifiable, but some people felt like putting their names up on the internet is something that's viewable like this. They may not want to be about that life. So we're not going to force them to be, because it's about students' voices and stuff.
Marcus.
Stay in order.
The person who may formerly be known as Anthony Barbieri.
Just a suggestion, I guess. It seems like it might just be because it's on the screen. But I feel like it being super dark with a black background, just looking at other colors, trying them, getting a little feedback, see what other colors might look good, might be worth it for the release on the 18th.
Noted. Okay.
Tina.
Because of like this is the Senate website right now, what has been done to check for like hackability?
Well, I'll answer in 2 parts. First is it's the login and everything is through CMS. So honestly, if you can hack CMS and you're going after the petition website, I think your priorities are slightly skewed in terms of things you can get. Second, so Kuzo, do you know anything about that? You're in WebTech?
I can also.
I yield it down to Justin.
Furthermore, it can also be said that this website has been in use since by our IT student government for a considerable amount of time. Our IT has also done a lot of work in making sure that it is not hackable. The WebTech group mostly gave ported it from our IT, so all the security and completion work that they did applies to us as well.
Jenna.
So you said that you can't take petitions down, but I'm guessing, or I'm hoping that you'll take some of the.
Everything's going to be cleared off the site, other than making me dictator for life of the Senate and making my classes GM. I'm R&E chair. That's an executive decision. Those stay. Everything else goes. That's a joke.
I'd like to find out, can you show us the moderator view? Is that possible?
I would if I had access yet, but I don't.
Is there anyone in the room who has access?
Gabe will be configuring Paul, myself, and Justin as initial admins.
And Kuzo.
And Kuzo, yeah.
Aiden.
You have it.
So I was wondering who, if anyone, has access to see the full names behind the signatures? Or is it truly anonymous from the moment that it's signed?
I believe it's truly anonymous from the moment it's signed. Do you know? Are the names, Justin, do you know if the names are stored anywhere? Do you know if the names of people who signed the website are stored anywhere, or if it's completely?
That would be a better question for Kuzo.
We'll get back to you on that
I
one.
yield my time to Kuzo.
That is to say, they're truly anonymous.
Andrew.
What's the monitoring gonna be like? 'Cause it's kind of like 5 minutes, we just posted a lot of bogus petitions. And I can only see that increasing as if this gets popular, people think this is a joke. So what's gonna be the level of monitoring? Is it gonna be like just WebTech and just that? 'Cause it seems like it's gonna be like a full-time job, just right now.
WebTech and R&E will be moderating it. Once I get access to the R&E Twitter, I will probably update it with the best joke petitions of all time. But it's kind of just, I'll probably be, as long as I'm still in R&E, logging into it probably 1 or 2 every day to check what's up on it. And it's just kind of whenever we have time to. R&E has weekly meetings, so I know at least, and WebTech both have weekly meetings, so I know at least once a week it'll get clean through then, but.
That's like real estate, guy.
Well, we'll do what we can.
Mason.
Is there a setting or are there plans to moderate the posts before they go live?
No.
Because right now anyone can post anything and then.
No, we discussed that. There was some discussion between us and the internet, which was feeling a type of way about us being able to moderate things before they go up, and Arnie discussed it as well. We felt that it was probably a better idea for students to be able to express their voices and put their petitions up without being moderated by us, for the same reason that it may take us a day or two, or maybe in the odd case that we forget, a longer time to get to it, so we don't call on petitions to be stuck in purgatory for a long time. And at the same time, the sponsor of the petition, who's the person who posts it, is their RCS ID is attached to it. So if they post something that's somewhat inappropriate, they will be able to identify them, and if they do something that requires sanction or forwarding to somebody else, we'll do that. And I yield my time to Kyle.
Yeah, so a few quick things. First, as others indicated, RIT's security measures are implemented here as well. I had a long conversation with their webmaster about this. Second, RIT's moderation team amounts to about 4 people, and they have a campus about 3 times the population of ours. They've been able to control the flow pretty well. Third, their workflow is much simpler than ours, which is to say, if you notice, a lot of the sample text in there right now says a student government response. Rather than like getting brought to the floor of their Senate and actually gaining official support, the only guarantee people who petition receive is that someone from student government will post a response, and they only need 50 signatures for that, so they're dealing with a much higher rate, and they've been able to handle that with a 4-person team. If it becomes an issue, R&E, like any other committee, is empowered to create subcommittees to aid itself in its duties. Those subcommittees would not be limited to the 10 members of R&E. So R&E could easily create a petitions team, which could moderate the site and have the sole focus of handling this, so R&E can focus on GM week. It's very flexible.
Kyle?
That covered it.
Shoshana?
Just remember, guys, this is just a tool to do what you can already do on paper. So it just keeps track of your signatures, encourages students to express their voice, where the Senate promises that they'll, pay attention. So yeah, moderation might not go so great initially, but if someone submitted a petition today, like normally on paper, there'd be 0 moderation. So in a sense that it doesn't matter if it works out or not, this is supposed to help students. We're not here to babysit them. Just make sure that they don't do anything really ridiculous, like try to put classes as GM.
Bro, come on, they're fresh.
Tina?
So I know there's a long list of suggestions, comments, problems. Is there an action plan? Like, are those definitely going to be completed by like this date that we're setting? What is it, the 18th? Like, how do we have confidence to know that those problems are going to be fixed before we launch it?
Because Gabe is good at doing things, and he's been effective at updating all the concerns that have been brought to him really quickly so far. So I believe he and the rest of WebTech will be able to take care of this. And Kyle, do you want the floor? I yield my time to Kyle.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, I met with Gabe and we came up with an action plan earlier today. We divided the concerns that we developed in cabinet, as well as other concerns based on the previous GBM conversations we've had, into a list at kind of like 3 levels, one of which is necessary fixes, the second of which is further plans for expansion past the release, and then finally just optional things, like someone mentioned having their name longer. We can pull that list up if the Senate wishes, but as it stands, the fixes that were deemed necessary are all very small. They include renaming the 2 categories up top. They include editing the threshold from 25 to 250, which is a very simple 1-number change in the database. It includes allowing users to unsign as well as sign, which is also a very simple, like, 1-function enable. So all of these things Gabe expects to have done by Monday at 3 p.m. when he and I next meet, and we both felt very confident that it can be dealt with in that time.
Colton?
Never mind.
Kyle?
That was just me.
Yes, I know, but you were in the queue. Tina?
That list that we were just referencing, I think for people who weren't in cabinet, it might be helpful to bring it up, just to make sure that we all agree with that division between what is necessary and what is just wanted. Because I do know that there are some differing opinions sometimes on those. So it would be good to share, just to make sure all know that we're voting on something that's gonna look different than what it does right now.
That's the petition handbook feedback.
Dang it.
Wait, that's the, oh.
Petition site feedback, yeah. If you'd like, I can walk through this if you want with me. Since I was in the conversation with you.
I was just gonna put it up there for the rest of my time and just let people kind of read it and look through it.
Are you asking that the time not be yielded and we sit here for another 4 minutes? Scotland?
Let me know when everyone's ready for me to go down.
Request for information,
Yes.
directed at the chair.
Ours, yes.
The site, is it going to remain on the server?
Yes. Yep. It's gonna stay on WebTech server, it's gonna stay open source. No. It will be connected with the new student government website when that launches, however.
Request for information, is anyone still reading?
Raise your hand if you're still reading. Straw poll, that's fine.
Alright, scroll down to the next page.
That's all, yes. Yeah, as long as you're not asking people to vote on something.
Who wants to make a motion?
You're not.
Seconded. For information, who had the Lord Helix edition?
Yeah.
You're making this weird.
Yeah, I am.
You say good?
I'm good.
Now I'm gonna continue talking now that you all read this. The second part of mine is I would like to motion to amend the wording of this motion right there. To add a clause that says contingent upon the changes outlined in this document.
So Tina proposes an amendment, just adding to the end, effective March 18th, 2015, contingent upon the agreed functionality upgrade, or the agreed changes being made. That should be clear enough.
The agreed changes outlined in whatever the name of the document is. I don't know what this.
Petition site feedback.
Okay, that's seconded. Do we have any objections? Okay, Justin objects.
Going to open a queue for discussion of Tina's proposed amendment to add contingent upon the changes in this document being made to the end of the motion. Spencer.
So, how this is worded, like, what do we do if they don't follow through with this due after launch stuff? Do we just like take the website away after a couple weeks, or just, it's ambiguous, but I like it. It just needs to be a timeline for things that do after the launch stuff. Or the stuff that they said they can do, but, you know, it says maybe with question marks and stuff.
Justin.
Okay, so, the thing is that, it works. So, I mean, putting a contingency on it is basically, you're gonna basically impede the release of an entire website that's been like, it's part of a schedule, so why would you wanna do that? I mean, it's not, it's literally, it's 6 things, it's really not that hard to do. It's a little bit absurd.
Kyle.
Yeah, as Spencer pointed out, we should amend this to just, and I can't amend this myself, but someone should amend this to just say, contingent upon the necessary changes listed being made. This is because, this is because as it stands right now, the due after launch, those are long-term goals. If you look up there, like Justin, the site doesn't quite work right now because there's a threshold of 25 signatures. We have agreed and put in our bylaws to 50, among other things. The necessary changes are simply the things that need to be done to make it compliant with our rules and acceptable to the public. And those are really quick.
Jess?
Is there any way for us to kind of not monitor, but like discuss like what we also think is necessary versus due after launch, et cetera, if we're like voting on this to be a contingency, but we have no,
Is that a request for information?
I guess,
So you're asking if there's ways for us to modify it after launch?
no. This, like, actual list, because we're voting on this contingency that we have no, like, control over, I guess?
I think if we're voting on this, people can add things to it.
So
That would
like
be the
adjusting
normal amendment
what's
and such.
after, like what's due after launch and what's necessary, etc.
I think that if this is what we're voting on as our official guiding document, yes, people could amend it to add things or move stuff around. However, I would recommend against it as this was poured over by technical people who know very much how the code base works and what changes can be made in what time frame, as well as the severity of each change.
How's moving this file into the Google Drive?
Shoshana?
So that everyone can see it. Just like it.
I motion to amend Tina's amendment so that it reads contingent on the changes outlined in the petition site feedback except for those listed under due after launch and optional changes.
Did everyone hear Shoshana's amendment? It's going to add to the end, basically she's changing Tina's to add further to the end on, except for those in the due after launch and the optional sections. So this includes the text changes. This does not include optional at the very bottom. It does not include due after launch, which is the long-term goals.
Wait, why does it include text changes? That's not what I said.
You said everything in the document except for optional and
Due after launch.
Yeah,
Text
text
changes
changes
are
is-
neither of those.
You said everything except due after launch and optional. So this would include functionality necessary and text.
He
You want
said
just
text-
necessary?
No, he said, when he read it, he said he said text changes are mandatory, the second two are not. He just,
For clarity, instead of proposing a negative, how about you say it this way? Effective March 18, 2015, contingent upon the changes in the necessary and text changes sections of this document. That would clear up any confusion.
Is that what you're looking for, Shoshana?
Josh?
Tina, head nod, yes or no?
Just to list these things out in the motion.
Yeah.
You just like, instead of referencing the document, bringing all out after the.
That would not be easier.
Okay, guys, currently the question is, Shoshana, if the amendment as Kyle said it in the positive is what you were looking to propose.
Fine.
Okay.
Does anyone have objection to making it the necessary changes listed here and the text changes listed here? So this would exclude anything listed as optional or due after launch. Any objection? Okay, seeing none, that goes into Tina's amendment. We're still in Tina's amendments queue. Correct.
Mason.
Pass.
Tina. Spencer. The queue is at. Hi, Anthony.
It just seems kind of silly that you're not having confidence in one of your own subcommittees. Just wanted to comment on that.
That wasn't a motion.
It's not a motion. Stay in order. Tina has support.
Tina.
Okay, to respond to that, one of the main reasons is if you look at number one thing, like the timeline currently on the website doesn't match what we voted on. So like, to me, I don't feel confident voting on something that doesn't reflect our own things that we outlined last week. So this enables us to say we're not voting on something that's wrong. Otherwise, we don't have to vote no technically because we know that it is
Mike.
Yeah, I agree with Tim here. They're necessary because they're necessary. So if those are actually completed on half the website, it's either that or we don't vote today and you come back when he does finish them and vote again. I feel confident saying that we vote yes today, Gabe will finish them with the contingencies, so I don't see a problem still.
Paul.
Yeah, I kind of feel like we can vote whether or not to include these stipulations or not, but without it, I'm confident and fine that I know Gabe's going to be able to get it done, and he had already guaranteed that he'll get it done before the time, so it's kind of like, it's a good idea, but it's not really super necessary, and it can kind of see how it would be annoying to have essentially a vote of no confidence put on him, but whatever.
Andrew.
No, sorry.
Jess.
It's not that we're not confident in them, that they're gonna change it, it's a matter of we're adding that in so we can actually like vote on the website with the changes. If we don't have that in, we're voting on the website as is, if I'm correct. So just adding that in allows us like basically to vote correctly. Because we vote yes now, we're voting on it as is. So.
Kyle?
Yeah, just to echo what's been said, again, it's not a matter of not having trust in the subcommittee, it's more that this gives us the flexibility where if some emergency happens and for whatever reason Gabe isn't able to make the changes, it doesn't launch and we would be able to vote on it again later. It just gives us that, that check, just in case these last few steps aren't taken. As for having to vote no now, if this isn't included, that's not necessarily true, but it would be a bit more of a blind statement of trust.
Justin?
First off, to address this motion inside of it, it's on a document that's publicly discussed, but it's accessible to the Senate. It's clearly listed, there's revision history, you know that these aren't going to change. So it doesn't matter if it's on the motion or if it's on the Google Doc, it's just whether or not we're going to waste more paper. That is that. On a broader scope, I have absolute 100% confidence in Gabe to be able to do this. He's clearly proven himself, and he will get it done in the next week. And God forbid anything were to happen to him, there's an entire committee behind it that will also be able to complete it if not necessary. So this amendment is completely pointless, unnecessary, and kind of just shows that we don't have faith in a committee of the Senate, which is really disappointing.
Edward. Okay. Michael.
We're saying the same things over and over again. I'd like to call the question.
That's valid. All those in favor of ending debate and voting on the amendment? It passes unanimously. That's 18-0-0. So we're going to now vote on the amendment. This would add to the end of the motion contingent upon all feedback listed as necessary or in the text change section of the petition site feedback document. This would add that to the end of the motion. Any confusion? Okay, all those in favor of that amendment? 18-0-0. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Passes 14-1-3. Language has been written in. We'll return to the main queue.
Aiden.
I guess I just had a question. If sponsors, I saw in there somewhere that if a sponsor withdraws their signature, they are no longer the sponsor. Who then would be the sponsor and whose name would be displayed on the...
In the handbook we just passed, it includes that. If a sponsor withdraws their signature, then it will be blank, and anybody who wants to can email RME asking to be made the sponsor.
Gotcha.
Yo, I want.
The queue is empty.
Speakend.
Or sorry, I guess that leaves.
Yes, Aiden.
I guess that leads me to the question of if someone sponsored a very inappropriate petition that would warrant that would warrant some sort of penalty or sanction, and then after it gets a signature, unsponsored it so that they couldn't be tracked for that. Is there a mechanism in place so that we can deal with that sort of situation?
Yes, since they would have to request Arnie to remove them as the.
Okay, I thought it was just a button they could click, or no, because it said that if they removed their signature, they would be removed as sponsor. That's what that said.
Well, then the Senate just don't give.
Jenna.
What about the inevitable impeach Shirley, and what happens if she sees
Beyond
the
scope of
impeachment?
it's beyond our scope. We
I
can't
mean-
control people posting stuff on the internet.
What happens if she's like just casually on the website, or someone who she knows is casually on the website and sees it says impeach Shirley?
Then we'll say somebody decided to post that there. It's beyond our scope, so it's just some people post things on the internet because they want to post it on the internet. We can't control it because taking things that have to do with institute human relations policy, like removing of institute officials, are human relations policy. It's beyond the scope of the student senate. So removal of any institute staff is beyond our scope, so we can't address it. And if somebody has something like that, we'll just tell them that because it's true.
Jess. Justin.
Pass.
Kyle.
There currently, from what I understand in the database, regardless of sponsorship, there's someone who is listed as the original creator of the petition, so that would be trackable. The priority, nevertheless, is proper moderation, not punishment. Punishment can happen if it happens, but what matters most is that the site is handled correctly. As for the inevitable remove Dr. Jackson that might appear, what matters most is that we respond professionally to something like that and remove it. That'll show good faith in us with the administration. You know, they'll see, okay, yes, a student was able to post this, they could have posted it on Facebook or whatever, but the student union took the appropriate measures and got rid of it.
Shoshana.
I move to call the question.
The queue is empty.
Yeah, is that order? Queue's empty. Any other point? Okay. Seeing no further points then, we're gonna move to vote on the entire motion. The site is funny, but I'm gonna reread the motion. Stay focused for a second, guys. Alright, the Rensselaer Union 45th Student Senate. Whereas the Student Senate supports a broader spectrum of student expression, a proactive student body, and a strengthened student voice. Whereas the Student Senate supports the expansion of student initiative, community involvement, and a productive student administrative relationship. Whereas there currently exists no convenient means for Rensselaer students to petition the Student Senate, resolves to endorse RPI petitions as a valid means of petitioning, following rules determined by the Rules and Elections Committee, effective March 18, 2015, contingent upon completion of the action items outlined in the necessary section and text changes section, excluding section 1.b, that's because they were listed explicitly as optional, of the petition site feedback document attached. So moved by Rules and Elections, presented by Paul E. Laurie.
Request for information. Can we pull up section 1B, please?
Yes, we can do that really quick. It's
Right off 11.
It's three changes under text that are listed as goals, not necessarily by release. This was because they would require database modification.
It should be. Oh. No.
Look at the Google Doc towards the middle.
No. Yeah.
Down, go down further, it's under text. So 1.b is right there, it's goals, not necessarily by release. Eventually, petitions are gonna be divided into three categories rather than two. So in addition to recognized and resolved, there would be pending, which would let people know when things are about to be voted on by the Senate or brought up in a meeting. This is later down the road, it's not necessary for the site, but it would require database modification. Does that answer your request?
Thank you.
Any further requests? All right, then seeing none, we're gonna move to vote. I just read the motion, moved by R&E, presented by Paul. All those in favor?
Oh my goodness.
Children. 8, 9, 7, 8. Wait. Are you voting?
You can't sign Kuzo on things.
And myself.
You apparently want to bring Tupac back now.
Wait, 17 out of 8.
Okay, all opposed?
Yep.
So 17, this passes 17-10. Okay, this brings us to our last major motion for the day. The Rensselaer Union 45th Student Senate resolves to adopt the Rensselaer Union voting system as the official voting procedure starting GM Week 2015. So moved by R&E and once again presented by Paul. Oh, and Anthony. I'll add that because that was supposed to be there.
So, once upon a time, voting took a while, and it was really, really boring, and stuff like, who's looking?
I don't know this called. It would have been, it was my
Oh.
This is not inspiring.
It would have been cute a lot.
You can stand at ease while they log in. Oh, here we go. Let's stay in order for this last presentation.
What happened was, so, paper voting, it's long, it's boring, it's annoying. So, we bought these, which are little USB card swipers. The union sysadmins in a process and stuff Anthony will talk about made code so you can swipe your ID card and vote in seconds.
Yeah, as Paul was saying, based on with those card swipers, we can attach those to anybody's computer. We can grab your RIN when you swipe it, and we can pull up the voting booth as shown in previous meetings. We did hold a beta test. We'll probably do some more beta testing even before GM Week, just to make sure all the kinks are worked out. We're also going to be meeting with RPI-SEC to do a little security testing, just to make sure we didn't miss anything. But we did just walk around the union the other night to test stuff. Just had a few different elections. Some were only for freshmen, some were only for graduates. Made sure that the people were only getting the races that they needed. So overall, we're pretty happy with the system. R&E seems happy with the system. And a lot of people that we talked to overall seemed happy with the system. It's going to allow for a much quicker vote count, and we don't have to deal with Scantrons, double checks for duplicate RINs, so you can't vote twice. So I know that's been an issue with paper ballots. And overall, it just speeds up the process, and I think it's a good thing for the union to use moving forward. Any questions?
Open the queue.
Going to create a queue for discussion of the motion to adopt the Rensselaer Union voting system as the official procedure.
Quick, Simon, can we just do one thing? So, this is what the front end of the thing will look like. We have a volunteer who had voted in one of our mock elections yet. I think it's not any voting.
I haven't.
I haven't. It doesn't matter.
No, it does because it will.
No, I'm saying like you're gonna do it on voting.
Yeah, so it was.
That's
no, it's not that. Anthony! No, it's not that. It's something else.
You can stand at ease while they deal with this.
Paul, you might need a window in case your cash is not allowed to go.
Sure.
Help desk.
Yeah, there's no queue at the moment. I didn't finish opening it.
Basic question then, what would happen if there's something like this going, and paper ballots are available in case?
Yes.
Where like,
Are the servers down?
All right, in this case, I'm going to finish opening the queue for discussion of the motion to adopt the Rensselaer Union voting system as the official.
If I can comment on that, it seems to be an issue with Paul's computer because it's coming up fine on my phone. So something's up, but
let's connect someone else's computer then.
I tried to access it. It wouldn't work for me.
It worked for me.
it might not. It might be just based on CMS2.
Okay.
But
All right, Justin.
So, this is a question, I guess, for Anthony, because Paul is doing things, but, there's an option for cohort, there's an option for filter. Can it be cohort and filter? I know we don't have any elections that do that, but is it possible?
yep. So like if we want to do like Greek only freshmen for some odd reason, it's totally doable.
James.
Alright, so seeing as it's late, we kind of beat this whole question pretty hard to death. Basically, the last time this kind of came from us last semester, and the fact that the voting like apparatuses have already been paid for, I'm just gonna call the question.
Second. Third. Yeah, that's fair. All those in favor of moving straight to a vote? Is that unanimous?
Paul?
All opposed? Okay, that passes 17-02. So we're gonna, what? We have 19 people.
18. We've been at 18 for a long time.
Yeah, there were 2 people who abstained, so either you miscounted or we have 19
Who
again.
abstained besides Paul?
Mason.
Oh, no, I had my hand up.
No, he had his hand up.
Oh, okay, then 17-01.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, my math is regressing again. Listen up, guys. So this means we're going to move to vote straight on the motion. The Rensselaer Union 45th Student Senate resolves to adopt the Rensselaer Union voting system as the official voting procedure starting GM Week 2015. So moved by the Rules and Elections Committee, presented by Paul E. Laurie and Anthony Barbieri. All those in favor? All opposed? Passes 16-1-1. Okay, so we've gotten through. Let's stay in order. I want to get through the agenda, the rest of the agenda, nice and quick. We have 2 approvals of minutes. They're the same procedure we've been following. First up, the Rensselaer Union 45th Student Senate approves the minutes for March 9, 2015 is attached. Move this. Move this. While we're at it, where's the other approval of minutes? Yeah, thanks you.
Someone approved that.
Okay. Okay. Approves the minutes for March 9, 2015 is attached. So moved by Tina Gilliland and seconded by Mike Kayola.
I'm going to open a queue for discussion of the approval of the minutes from March 9th. Mike.
I moved to adjourn this meeting. It's late. Some people want to play intramural soccer, and some people want to see their families.
I oppose.
Are you seconding?
Object, I meant.
Well, this is not unanimous consent.
It's not unanimous consent, but we will vote on it. So he moves to adjourn. This is 2/3, I believe?
It's
majority.
Majority. This is simple majority. If we adjourn, we cut off here and just end for the night. We have gotten through a lot. All those in favor of immediate adjournment? All opposed? 6-8. Fails, 6-8-4. Okay, back to approval minutes.
The queue is empty.
Okay, then we're going to proceed. All those in favor of approval of minutes for March 9th, 2015? All opposed? Okay, passes 12-06. Take that. The Rensselaer Union 45th Student Senate approves the minutes for January 26, 2015 is attached. So moved by Michael Hahn, seconded by Justin Etzine.
Can open a queue for discussion of the motion to approve the minutes from January 26th. The queue is empty.
Okay.
I don't think I can vote on that.
Then don't vote.
Then we don't have the.
It
There
doesn't
is
matter.
quorum. You're
You're
here.
not voting. Okay. Any questions? All right, seeing none, we move to vote. The Rensselaer Union 45th Student Senate approves the minutes for January 26, 2015 is attached. So moved by Michael Hahn, seconded by Justin Etzine. All those in favor? All opposed? Passes 1107. Okay, so we do have reports. However, I'm going to ask that you fly through these, make it no more than...
There
There were only two. I said there were two. There's only two approvals of minutes. So we only have reports. We're going to go right through the committees. Paul? Okay, academic affairs, Marcus.
We're ready for sport products and we're hoping to get some results soon by responses from the faculty.
All right, Jen is not here for communications. Do we have anyone? Okay, seeing none. Michael, FSC.
We ordered the picnic tables yesterday, 2 days ago, and I single-handedly brought back Arizona.
Whoa.
Just kidding. HSAC'd it. So now it's back.
Okay, Joe, HSEC.
Open surveys done, field trips coming soon, Arizona's back. Questions? Stay hungry, my friends.
All right. Lexi, SLC.
SLC will be presenting an e-board proposal next Tuesday to get a pilot van service to the mall on Saturdays for free for students.
Any questions for Lexi? Okay, that proposal, if it goes through the e-board, is currently slated for a vote in our April 2nd meeting. That may change. Paul, student rights.
We had no forum stuff.
It was a successful forum. There were a lot of people in attendance. I'll mention more about this in my report. Anyone from WebTech?
I can say something. There was that petition website. That was pretty cool. Thanks to Gabe for all of that work. He's awesome. I also met with Marvin Corsair of FSC. We're working on the classroom assessment project. I also have yet to meet with Marcus about the syllabus project. So yeah, that's a thing.
All right. Anyone from Constitution?
It's over. We did it.
It's over.
Yeah, all constitutional amendments have been proposed in front of the Senate, so. Yes.
All right. Once again, congratulations, Constitution Committee. There will be more publicity leading up to GM Week, as well as a public forum, so any students who are concerned can talk to us directly about the issues. Constituents, really quick, Shoshana, e-board.
The executive board approved a $200 allocation in the juggling club for equipment, including clubs, juggling balls, a duffel bag to hold their equipment, and a kendama, which is like a ball on a cup, because they currently have safety concerns with their equipment. We also approved a $5,000 subsidy for Model Railroad to build a new door so that they can actually access their club and therefore function, because of the safety concerns, that entrance was shut down, so they couldn't access their club space. This work will be taking place over spring break, so they should be operational by the end of the semester.
Justin, you had a question?
Why'd you close your meeting?
That will
That's
be
private at
told
the
when the
moment.
motion is open.
Anyone from grad council?
This week we met with Lisa Tran and talked about grad student fees, answer the hard questions, she avoided them all. You guys got anytime, ask her the same questions and she won't answer them either. What else did we do? The grad council, you guys be happy to know we brought back Arizona, right?
Continue. Yep.
They're currently in a deal with Putin and to get back to the Ukrainian rebels. We found a weak point in OG's Death Star. And we got ISIS to agree to GPA minimums.
All right. Anyone who can represent IFC?
I can. It was officially announced at the meeting that administration has put Theta Chi on suspension for an undetermined amount of time. They cannot wear their letters or anything.
Oh. Do you have any further details on that?
That is all that was officially released to me.
Okay.
Their housing is also now just considered apartment suites, and they can be evicted at any time. That's all I know.
Okay. Well, Panhell, anything else?
Nope, we do nothing.
Okay.
I see three.
The website is in progress. I know a lot of you went and had your headshots taken, but not all of you. So if you didn't have your headshot taken, you should email me a headshot in your polo with somewhat neutral background behind you. And if you did have it taken, the email of the picture will go to you, and it doesn't magically end up on the website, so you need to forward that email to me, so I get it. And then lastly, if you have not filled out your member bio, you need to do that. That stuff is kind of slowing down our progress in the member section right now. We have a tentative, we're hoping to get it up so that you guys can look at it the Monday we come back for spring break, and then hopefully we'll be able to release it by that Thursday meeting.
All right. Thank you, Tina. Go for it.
I have two questions. Are the bios reviewed by any committee or member? Bios.
They said bylaws.
Jay, what is more?
The bios, I was just kind of looking at them.
Okay. And my second question would be, how long does it take to put
Wait, can you repeat that louder for the minutes, please?
Minutes. For the minutes. I mean, the news is here too, but you know. How long do you need, or how long do you?
How long will it take to get to my email?
Oh, from the photo club?
Yeah.
I do not know, because
Yeah, I have
photo
no
club
idea.
did them. I've done the pictures before and typically get them within the next couple days, so I'm surprised that you guys haven't gotten them yet.
They had over 50 people, so it might just be taking them a while.
So I'd be looking for them.
Anything else for Tina? Okay. All right. So first, in my report, Jacob, do you want to mention a thing about the undergraduate council committee since you happen to be here and you can represent better
Yes,
than I?
that'd be great. I was going to actually ask you that anyways. So, since the magical Senate changes pass and it's got to be on the ballot, the UC needs to prepare for the case that they pass in the student body. So we have to rewrite our bylaws and make budgeting procedure. And since both of those documents will have to be reviewed by the Senate, it would be great to have senators on the two committees that I'm forming, which is bylaws review and budgeting policy. So please let me know if you're interested. I could really use your guys' help.
Do you have a meeting time yet?
I don't have a meeting time because I don't have the full list of people who are interested.
So if you're interested in those committees, email Jacob, and if you don't have his email, you can email me.
It's just UC
and I'll just forward it to
at
him.
RPI.edu.
Yeah. All right. So next.
Hold on.
Don't worry about the question.
Oh, I thought it was a question.
Okay, so next I'm gonna do this a little out of order. Sweatshirt reminders. If you haven't filled that out, fill it out. Holly needs to know ASAP. I sent the sweatshirt thing out to the Senate on last week before the crazy week of 3 meetings. Next week we have the Handbook of Student Rights. These changes were discussed in the public forum yesterday, so a lot of you have already seen them. Paul, did you send them out to the Senate yet or no? Okay, well those will be sent out ASAP so that we have at least a week for everyone to review them. Otherwise, next week should be a much lighter meeting. Congrats on getting through this hard week of 3 meetings, and thank you all for sticking with it. So, one final point. There's a document I'm going to be sharing with the Senate relevant to the petition site. This is called Starter Petitions. That is to say, the way we're advertising this, in addition to posters and probably some tabling, is we are going to have a number of people in different organizations who have their own causes start their own petition. I've already spoken with the RMA, for example, with other people I know throughout the student body. I want to share this with the whole Senate, and I'd like each of you to come up with one petition, ideally not relevant to one of our current Senate projects, only because they've already heard about those issues. We want something new. So come up with a petition, be ready to post it when the site goes live, list it on that document, and I'll be in touch with you to refine the language and so on. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, we're good. Any unfinished business?
My name is still not changed.
Noted. New business. New business.
Campaigning.
Yeah, campaigning starts on the 18th at 8 o'clock p.m. or 8 o'clock a.m. Thank
Okay.
you. So if you're interested in running for any sort of office next year, get the forms into Paul, but campaigning cannot start until then. Any other new business? Questions from the press? Okay, meeting adjourned. Congratulations, everyone.